Welcome, everybody. It is time for day 2 of the second OCC Ultimate. We have our top 4 vying for the lion's share of a $3,000 prize pool. First place here, 1,000 smackaroos. So there is a lot on the line. I am your host, Christo. I am joined by Berto. I am joined by Starry, and I am excited to have them both here. Before we get into more detail, let's go ahead and bring up the bracket so we can get you up to speed with what type of action you're going to see today. So there you see our quarterfinals that we passed through yesterday. Baron von Glower, who will be in our first semifinal, having a huge victory over J King 3-0. TangTang defeating Head 3-1. Ozzy over Xiang, who unfortunately was not able to submit their deck list in time. And No Win 5 beating Vinny in a nail biter 3-2. All those players you see who did not make it through the quarterfinals will still be taking home 125 US dollars. So not walking away empty-handed by any means, but probably feeling a little bit emotionally defeated at this point. Nevertheless, we are going to get through Baron and TangTang as well as Azzy is known to round out our semifinals. For that second semifinals, we will be joined by Spooz and by Bubbles. So let's get into it. We got a lot of action here today. Before we dive into our first semifinal, Berto, let's start with you. Any big takeaways from yesterday? This is our first ultimate in kind of the new meta, air quotes. Anything specific that you saw that you maybe weren't expecting, or any highlights from you for yesterday?
Well, I saw Discard really underperforming and people really adapting to that precursor to the meta, so to speak, where people were finding a lot of success with Discard, and now people are really struggling on Discard. People are finding some ways to play around it, play around individual cards in the deck, and also play around it in the archetypes that they're bringing. So I found that really exciting to see.
Absolutely. We saw a ton of discard in the last OCC clash. It performed fairly well. People bringing it yesterday, probably a little disappointed with its performance. Starry, what about you? Any big takeaways from yesterday?
I'm kind of in the same spot as Berto. We definitely saw people adapting their playstyles and deck lists to play around discard, and I think that today we're probably going to see decks like Jagro or Heinz lists or other aggressive decks continue to challenge those dominant discard decks, and I'm curious to see how players are going to adapt their play to take on that challenge.
Well, speaking of people who played around, some of that discard and what we thought might become some of the tournament meta, let's start off this first semifinal talking about Baron a little bit. Let's bring up Baron's player profile here, just get you acclimatized. If you missed it yesterday, 20,000 matches lifetime, sorry, 19,340. With a 60.97% win rate, qualified for the ultimate literally in the last OCC clash, so just snuck in but put up an absolutely dominant performance. Starry, I believe you spoke with Baron a little bit yesterday after his big win over J King. Anything you want to add based on how yesterday went, or how you think Baron will be approaching today?
Yeah, I mean, Baron definitely, I know that he spent his time practicing, so it's definitely a well-deserved win. He said he was taking a break from ladder this month to focus on this tournament, and I'm glad that that effort paid off. He was really thrilled about yesterday. He said something along the lines of, "Am I dreaming?" But really glad to see him progress into the next stage of the competition.
Absolutely well deserved. Why don't we go ahead and walk through Baron's deck list while we're at it? Starry, you can go ahead and take us through what Baron is arming himself with for this best of five semifinal.
So Baron's first deck is a Japan-Germany Jagro list, and we're seeing this become pretty standard. It's going back to it is looking very similar to previous iterations of the deck from before Feigned Retreat. Feigned Retreat became popular, and so we see that for the major draw engine, Baron is playing a lot of one-cost Blitz infantry and 4 copies of expansion, allowing Baron to quickly amass cards early in the game, as well as playing 2 4-cost 6/5 planes, one being the Key 45 Dragon Slayer and the other being Key 83. And some players have been experimenting with Naval Supply Run, and Baron is playing 2 copies of Naval Supply Run, and this allows it's essentially like 2 more copies of Blitzkrieg, except that it sticks around on the field for longer. Past the 1 turn of Blitzkrieg. And so, yeah, I am curious to see how those naval supply runs are gonna turn out. I don't think we got to see them yesterday, but the second deck that Baron is playing is a US-Germany frontline list, and this list is pretty solidified by now. We just made minor changes after 32nd Infantry got rotated with the expansion. And instead, now we are playing additional copies of Greyhound as well as Gebirgspioneer. And that's our replacement for 32nd Infantry, but otherwise the deck remains pretty much unchanged. So you're going to see the same kind of openers and strategies that if you're a regular OCC viewer that you've been seeing for years at this point. The third list that Baron is running is a Britain-US unit list. And this is the sort of new iteration of unit lists after Liberation got rotated, and we got the addition of Escort Group, which allows, as long as the cards that are generated off of Escort Group, as long as they stay in the deck for long enough, they can do big burst damage really quick. And it relies on cards like Firewall and Supply Shortage, obviously, to prevent taking too much damage. But yep. And then the last list is, Baron calls it Femboy Heinz. It is a Germany Soviet Heinz list that uses Iron from the North, as well as the zero-cost Infantry with Blitz 554th Rifle Regiment, which allows you to 554th Rifle Regiment, push it up into the front line, play an Iron from the North, play out your entire hand, and then have this huge board early and be able to quickly Enigma on turn 4 or 5, or 5-year plan to refill your hand. And it's more aggressive than the US or Japan secondary Heinz lists that have been running around, but it is really explosive, and if your opponent isn't ready for it, it can really shake them up.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Starry. Let's take a look on the other side of the battlefield. We've got TangTang here. Let's bring up their player card quickly and just take a quick peek. In case you missed it yesterday, we've seen TangTang compete in 15,329 matches, 71% win rate, qualifying for this ultimate in 5th position. Berto, why don't you walk us through exactly what TangTang has got equipped here today?
Right. So TangTang firstly has a US-Italy ramp, which runs some new cards in the Pathfinders and the Night Bombing to get a little extra removal into this list, which is very exciting to see. And importantly runs cards like B17F and M4A1 as anti-control and anti-discard tech. Which we'll see if those cards pose any problem for Baron, especially his unitless deck, which has few ways to deal with such cards. Next up, we have another ramp list, this time Britain main, with a lot of heavy options to try and be good into these control matchups again, with things even like Comet, A34 Comet, the 6/6 tank that draws a card every time you hit your opponent's HQ. I'm still not over this. I want to see it in play, and I want to see it do some work. And he has another Japan-Germany Jagro, similar to Baron. One of the new interesting differences that we are seeing a lot of the time now is this double martyr in the Jagro list to sort of make up a bit for that draw, but it also has the drawback of you needing to trade out your units rather than going exclusively to the HQ with your damage. So I think we'll see that this 2 of Martyr sort of becomes a decision point in a lot of these Jagro lists. And finally, TangTang has a Germany, Japan, aggro Heinz list, and I'm excited to see how this list compares to Baron's Femboy Heinz. It does have the Stug Brie F, which is particularly powerful in the Heinz mirror because it deals double damage to other tank units.
Right on. Thank you so much, Berto. Let's dive into the bans. This is best of 5, each player bringing 4 decks. One will be crossed out here. And oh boy, there goes Jagro on both sides of the battlefield here. Starry, let's start with you. yesterday we saw Jagro perform particularly well when it didn't get banned. Is that the main reason you think both players here are saying, "I don't want to deal with this in this first semifinal"?
Yeah, Jagro sort of has replaced Brit Air as this deck that has a pretty even matchup into all other decks. And so it's really hard to win 2 games against Jagro. You can win, one, but expecting to win 2 games against Jagro is really hard. And so just getting rid of the Jagro lists makes a lot of sense.
And Berto, you mentioned the TangTang's Heinz list is set up maybe as a slightly better spot in the mirror matchup based on the Stug. It also seems, just based on looking at the list, it seems that touch faster than what Baron has. Am I right in seeing that, or is it still kind of a toss up when they go up against each other?
Well, it's very important who goes first in the matchup. Baron has the opportunity to be faster with the 554th Infantry's, Rifle Regiment, rather. Um, if you get that out and you get an iron from the north, then of course it's going to be faster from Baron's end. But if you're not able to get control of that front line, then I think there's a little more consistency coming out from TangTang's list.
And we saw Baron yesterday draw exactly that combo in the early stages of the game against J King and just absolutely control the front line from the first turn with a huge amount of tanks, which turned out to cause J King a little bit of a problem. So definitely think, from your point to your point, it's about consistency there. Baron having that combo can really take initiative, whereas TangTang has maybe a little bit of just a lower curve, which at the beginning might work out okay. On the back end of that matchup might not be ideal. Starry, in general, we talked a little bit about the discard sort of control sort of options not working out quite as well as we thought yesterday. Both of these players are playing a fairly quick lineup. Is that just the fact that, hey, they saw it, they adapted, they moved through? I say fairly quick because Baron's still got things like frontline, not frontline, sorry, unit lists and things like that. But overall, do you think it's just a question of yesterday these faster decks just outperformed the control variants that we saw?
Um, yeah, I mean, these players were planning on taking these lists beforehand, and Baron expected a lot of discard, and so that unit list deck preys on discard, but it's probably going to struggle against some of these faster decks. So I'm curious if Baron will be able to keep in it.
Well, we're gonna find out here as we dive into our first semi-final of the second OCC Ultimate.
I find that curious that okay, I was gonna say TangTang keeping the Wirbelwind over the Stugdree, when Baron has a lot more tanks to go around than air units. But TangTang deciding that yes, he would rather keep that Stugdree for things like Greyhounds. But will
So
he play
this,
the Golden Stug? Sorry, go ahead, Starry.
yeah, so this engineers allows Baron to push up a Red Devils that is going to be pretty difficult for TangTang to get rid of um, without the Type 93, but with the Type 93, it is not going to survive, and thus Baron decides instead to wait a little bit, allow TangTang to push into the front line, and play a Pier. Or PIR, I guess.
Yeah, there's a little disagreement with people who say peer, people who say PAR. I like to say PIR just because it sounds like peer, PEER.
Yeah, PIR is an acronym, I believe, for Parachute Infantry Regiment. But I still have the bad habit of saying Pier.
Now, Baron, he does have the opportunity this turn to kill the Type 93 and push up a Red Devils if he wants. Although it would take the use of his dive bombing, and he decides that the dive bombing is too useful in his eyes. and simply moves up a Greyhound to trade.
Yeah, Baron has the strong foundation of that support line. Both of those units are going to continue to be helpful throughout the game. And as we pivot into the middle and late game, we might even see them trade off. But for now, they're just providing useful buffs for Baron's other units.
We have a few options here from Baron's end. You can play the 5th Rangers and get a trade in. It's often nice to trade with 5th Rangers right away against this deck so that the Sendai regiment on 5th Rangers isn't quite so crushing. Because when that 5th Rangers comes back down, it is going to have 4 operation cost as just a 4/4. So it's nice to cash in. You can trade with Red Devils, or you can play a Pathfinders as well to clear. You can even
Yeah,
dive bombing, push up the Red Devils.
Baron does have ideas later in the game of pushing up a Red Devils into a 99th or a Sherman, but that Sendai is really strong in this matchup because it clears the front line really effectively.
Baron misses the 33% chance to buff his Red Devils, which would have been a nice little bonus here. Although, if the Sendai is coming down from TangTang, it looks like it probably wouldn't have mattered either way.
So TangTang opting to keep the health on the backline units for future trades instead of trading them into the Red Devils, but this does open up TangTang to a potential Stars and Stripes, which Baron plays one copy of. But unfortunately for Baron, he is not going to be able to punish it. It is only a single card in the deck.
Yeah, and here we see an interesting position because usually in the spot against most decks, you would want to take this guaranteed Sherman draw when you have the opportunity to. However, against a deck that runs Enigma, that becomes a little more of a liability than a bonus. So we see Baron is simply going to half track and push up.
That second Type 94 draw gives TangTang the option to double surprise attack a unit at some point in the game, which will definitely be important if Baron drops something particularly threatening.
Speaking of particularly threatening, this 7-2 PIR has to go, and TangTang agrees, trading off the Ferkelwind.
Yeah, Baron is faced with a difficult choice, either having to push up the engineers or the 3-2, which is just going to trade into this Stug. But it isn't the worst thing in the world. Actually opting to push up both, making it hard for TangTang to take back the front line in a single turn.
And controlling this front line, as we've said time and time again, is so crucial against Heinz. TangTang doesn't really have many options, however, whether or not he controls the front line to do a whole lot on this board.
TangTang is very low on cards in hand, but also has the opportunity to Enigma next turn.
Yeah, Baron might find himself getting punished for playing the Sherman. Of course, he didn't know TangTang's hand, and he didn't know how much power and it was in that hand. it looks like we'll see Baron play out as much of his hand now, as he does recognize that Enigma is TangTang's way back into this game.
Putting that 3-5 in the front line would ordinarily be really, really difficult for TangTang to get rid of, but TangTang happens to draw the Honorable Death, which is not only going to get rid of it, it's going to create, it's going to make Baron draw one more card, which TangTang is then going to recoup with Enigma.
Yeah, and that is absolutely huge to find that Honorable Death there for TangTang.
So TangTang didn't want the Pathfinders to return the Sendai at the beginning of the turn, and so he opted to lose Smokescreen on the Sendai in exchange for keeping it on the board. But that strat bombing from Baron is going to get rid of it anyways.
And crucially, removing a credit slot from TangTang, which is going to have major effects for the rest of this game, now that TangTang has the cards to spend on these units.
TangTang needs to find some way of getting rid of that Pathfinders, but if Baron keeps putting these massive units in the front line like that, I'm not sure what options TangTang has.
Yeah, he's used both surprise attacks, and he only has one Sendai left in the deck. So that 8/8 Fifth Rangers is going to be a big issue, and even if he finds the other Sendai, Baron is able to push up another 8/8 Fifth Rangers, which also will present 16 damage on board if he has the two of them in the front line.
Yeah, the Sendai and the Yag Bomber are TangTang's only options to get rid of that Pathfinders, and the Yag Bomber, honestly, probably doesn't even make sense to play anyways because it gives Pathfinders another opportunity to take out one of TangTang's support line units.
Here, it's hard for TangTang to play all of his units, especially with the Nakshub on board, without access to this front line to clear out your back line.
Yeah, we
He's
saw
got
this
a consistent.
Go ahead.
He's got a consistent draw engine, though, apparently, with this Pathfinder's repeatedly bouncing this Panzer 38T.
Yeah, we see TangTang in a similar position to yesterday, where having that cramped backline and a lack of blitz units makes it really difficult to gain any ground once your opponent has a solid front line. And I don't know what's more solid than a +4/+4 Fifth Rangers. Baron is opting to push up the Pathfinders. Evidently, he is satisfied with the level of retreats that he's gotten and is now just looking to close out the game and continue putting pressure on that front line.
Yeah, I don't love this play from Baron. I feel like this makes a Sendai definitely a winning opportunity here for TangTang. I would have loved to see another Fifth Rangers push up, recognizing the limitations of what's left in TangTang's deck. I think that would have been just a little more consistent.
All Baron needs is to not lose the front line here. That Hellcat plus the Sherman is a total of 9 credits and 8 damage. So as long as he can prevent losing the front line, that'll be good enough. But that's not going to be possible.
Yeah, and TangTang now has been given a way back into this game with this front line opening up.
If TangTang can manage to get a Panzer 1B with that Panzer 3F on the board, the Panzer 1B will have Blitz, and for 3 credits, TangTang has the option of printing a 2-2 in the front line as many times as he would like, and printing 2-2s in the front line against a deck that needs the front line to win is certainly not far from a nail in a coffin.
Baron opting to play his 5th Rangers as a 4/4 as this risk of TangTang finding that Sendai increases. Which I think is very reasonable. And will he remove the Blitz, perhaps, or will he go to the HQ? He does decide to go to the HQ, hoping to connect this Hellcat next turn, probably.
TangTang is going to need to clear the front line, take the front line, have it not be killed by that 4/1 5th Ranger sitting in the back line. Basically has to find some way to prevent that Hellcat from getting through, but that is much, much easier said than done.
So TangTang is able to trade this 1 Kree off, play Panzer Kree F, and trade a 4/4 into the 4/4 Sherman, and trade the Kree 5 into this 4 Kree 5th Rangers, and push up. However, that's not going to be enough to prevent the Hellcat lethal. And we see a game where TangTang was very close to coming back, but just not quite. And the game going over to Baron von Glower. Very nice first game.
So Baron still has access to Femboy Hines and Unitless. Finding a victory on Unitless is probably going to be the more challenging of the two necessary wins for Baron. Do you expect Baron to try and get that win out of the way early, or save it for the end?
Well, apparently he's going to save it for the end, opting for this unitless. I didn't even have a chance to consider the options.
Having that Pioneer in the opening hand, allowing for a turn 2 either double War Machine or a Convoy, is a huge boon as far as starting hands go. You're really digging for that Pioneer when you're mulliganing with not only this deck, but really any Britain-based or Britain order-based deck. Such a strong card.
Yes, and no honorable death from TangTang to deal with it.
But TangTang is going to get off to the races. He does want to play around Baron's 2 copies of supply shortages, but at the moment Baron doesn't have any, and if TangTang can manage to play a Rife next turn, things could start looking pretty hairy for Baron.
Yeah, and it is only 2 copies of supply shortage, but it's so important in these kinds of matchups, where 4 firewalls just does not cut it, dealing with all these early game units. TangTang does find an answer to that Pioneer, and there's no point holding around those surprise attacks because that's the only unit in Baron's deck.
So normally in Unitless you want to be pointing those gunship missions at the opponent's HQ, but that type really needs to go, or else it's going to be creating 3 more damage on Baron's HQ this turn.
Baron really needs to find a supply shortage right here and now, but he does not. That means this Panzer III F is going to come down. Supply shortage 1 card too late.
Playing Greif beforehand to buff the Greif.
And that's a lot of damage being presented. That is
And
9 damage this turn.
It's here we see why the Unitless deck is less effective against these aggressive decks. By the time that you have the answers oftentimes your opponent is near winning the game.
Yeah, this is surely not the matchup that Baron was fishing for when he selected this unitless deck.
Yeah, no
Okay,
matter what
not...
Baron does there, the math does not add up.
Yeah, he could have
TangTang is gonna be able to
technically
take that.
survived on board, but he would have been dead to the Heinkel from hand from TangTang. And even if you're surviving on board, there's not a lot of you can do for the rest of that game.
Yeah, so I expect that Baron is gonna have a repeat with unitless trying to get that win. Actually opting for Femboy Hines. Going first is huge, and having the Iron from the North and the 554th in the same in the opening hand, but instead Baron is just opting to create huge board pressure really early on, which is going to be difficult for TangTang's ramp list to deal with.
I would have actually loved to see Baron keep that Heinkel for hand refill, although he doesn't get too hard punished because he finds that 20-second right on turn 2.
Yeah, and Baron could actually have a turn 4 win here with Blitzkrieg if the cards line up. Looking for that Blitzkrieg with Panzer 3H.
And picking so fast that we don't even get to see the other options, but surely not a Blitzkrieg. Surely there was not a Blitzkrieg available there, or he surely would have taken it. And TangTang going for the ramp rather than the removal, perhaps? No, opting for the pan.
I'm not sure if TangTang can afford not to go for the removal.
Yeah, there's just so much pressure here, and each turn that Baron gets another draw from that 20-second is another chance at Blitzkrieg closing out this game.
Oh, and there it is. We are 1 credit off from a Blitzkrieg lethal, but Baron is going to set it up for the following turn.
And TangTang can heal a little bit, and he can United We Stand, but
That's not
that's
going to be
not
enough
going to be enough.
to prevent Blitzkrieg.
And a super quick win here for Baron.
That's kind of how it goes with Femboy Hines. You win quick or you lose quick. Like TangTang is, playing that Japan secondary Hines list. And they both share the similarity that if your opponent takes the front line, it's really difficult to get it back. So either you win quick or your opponent takes the front line, and either way, the games don't last very long. Right,
And a
and
quick win
so
for...
So TangTang is gonna need to win against this firewall unitless with both the US Italy ramp as well as what's TangTang's British deck again?
It is British main ramp as well, which is both of these decks have the opportunity to beat this unitless deck. TangTang's British deck has 2 copies of Blackwatch, which can be huge against Baron's unitless deck, and the US Italy deck runs M4A1 and B17F, both of which are huge issues for Baron's unitless deck as well.
Yeah, a lot of times in these matchups against unit list, it's about how many threats can you present, because Baron only has 4 copies of Firewall, which means that if you can force Baron to use them all, then every threat that you play is potentially game ending. But you do need to do it before Baron can manage to play the escort group, choosing armaments, and being able to do a potential huge amount of damage with those. So can TangTang present those threats quick enough is the question that is being asked.
Very nicely playing around Ultra.
Yeah, although Monty is arguably the strongest card in the game, in this matchup, it's a little bit less useful. Certainly less useful than a Lend-Lease. Baron does need to find a way to take care of that honey, because the longer that honey stays on the board, the farther away Baron is from that Commonwealth win condition, from the damage to the HQ win condition.
Yeah, he can play this gunship mission and supply shortage to deal with honey, which is quite a few pieces of removal to deal with a single unit. But it might just be what Baron has to do, unless TangTang moves up and attacks.
And so now the gunship mission is offline. It's no longer playable on that honey. And so Baron's options for getting rid of the honey decreased from not so great to none at all.
I'm a little curious about playing the gunship mission versus playing the war machine here from Baron.
So with a huge hand, that Lancaster is really going to slow down Baron's progress for the rest of the game. All of the cards are still playable. Baron does run those war machines as well as the Pioneer, so Commonwealth is still playable, but just the having to pay one more credit for each order is definitely frustrating.
And Blackwatch in combination as well makes Baron's hands really hard to play. Really slow. And I suspect we'll see the double ramp here with the War Machine and in Hour of Need.
Is it okay to let that Lancaster stay?
The
And by
Lancaster,
stay I mean its ability to attack. Does Baron need to firewall that Lancaster?
it's already been firewalled.
Oh, apologies. So Baron wants to spend the firewalls on the things that don't immediately need to be removed, like the Grenadier Guards and the Lancaster, but that Blackwatch is causing so many problems just with its passive effect that it's not really worth firewalling if you're going to need to kill it anyway.
But Baron doesn't really have any way to kill it in his deck. Can supply shortage and wait for 6 turns, but that doesn't really seem like a viable option.
Does Baron play Monsoon Rot? Let me check real quick.
Do not believe he does.
He does not, which means, yeah, you're absolutely right. That Blackwatch is going to be really, really difficult to deal with, and Baron is quickly running out of options, especially since they cost so much. He's kind of hanging on for by a thread here. And faced with the daunting challenge of dealing 27 damage to the enemy HQ, I really don't see how Baron would get out of this.
The small mistake here from Baron as well, playing the 9k Lend-Lease instead of the 10k Lend-Lease with 10 credits left. Everything left in your deck is in order, so there's nothing playable on 1k. And all that healing coming out makes Baron say, okay, this one's yours. Let's move on to the next.
Yeah, TangTang isn't even playing a Commonwealth, but the task of trying to deal 35 damage to HQ is just way too much. And so we're going to see in this final game, this deciding factor, Baron is going to be playing that Brit US unit list against TangTang's US Italy ramp.
And TangTang recognizing that this M4A1 is a huge issue for Baron, deciding
Baron
to keep it in his opening hand.
Baron can't use Firewall to target that M4A1 due to M4A1's passive effect. And so M4A1 is going to be able to get that damage through. And as we found out last game, Baron's solutions for dealing with M4A1 are probably just going to be waiting for 5 turns with supply shortage, which is definitely not ideal.
Yeah, and the B-17F from TangTang as well. These are 2 of the 3 crucial units in this matchup, which is huge for TangTang.
Baron has the ability to firewall this this 5th Rangers, but it is not credit efficient whatsoever, and there are plenty of different threats that are worth firewalling, and so Baron instead opts to play an Hour of Need and try and get closer to being able to play that convoy, the daylight bombing, etc.
And TangTang looking to get some good damage in early on, so this Commonwealth is never really playable for Baron von Glower. And Baron's going to be very upset to see this M4A1. Welcome, he says. He knows how crucial that draw is of M4A1.
Yeah, so Baron without a supply shortage is going to need to gain four life every turn, 4 defense on the HQ every turn, just to counteract the M4. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't see how Baron is gonna manage to do that, but
No, I think this game might be all but over. He has a lot of options to deal with threats, but not this threat in particular.
yeah, and so Baron teching this firewall unitless deck is super good against these discard decks, and in the first round matchup against J King, it paid off several times over. But you know, we're seeing these discard decks not perform as well as we would have otherwise thought. Between last OCC and this OCC Ultimate, we're seeing that there's definitely a lot of contenders, a lot of decks that can pressure these discard decks, and TangTang managed to find some of those lists, and when Baron is prepared for discard, you know, that's how the cookie crumbles, I guess.
Baron could find... He does have 2 armaments in the deck. If things line up really well and he finds them both for 8 damage, then Baron has a chance. He
Yeah, the
has
game
enough healing to potentially do it.
game isn't over, but it's statistically not super likely.
TangTang has nothing else to use these removal pieces on, so it makes sense to double United We Stand. Remove as many options from Baron as possible. Not even bothering to hold up the decisive defense, as he knows it is never doing anything in this matchup.
Here's one armament. How much does it? I believe Baron is checking for how much damage it does, but unfortunately, due to the way that the screen is displayed, we're not going to get to know that.
Yeah, unless anybody was counting in the chat how many turns it's been. I was not.
Baron managing to hang on. Going up to 25. I was curious if TangTang was gonna opt for the 0 operation cost or the +4/+4. Both seem really good, but the +4/+4 is a bit weak to firewall.
And we're really seeing how crucial that M4A1 was in this matchup, as Baron would have won the game on that turn had TangTang not found the M4A1.
Although it might not matter this game, against this firewall unitless deck, air units being able to deal damage from the backline are usually super good because you know, if you use 4 copies of firewall on 4 of the 5 slots, unit slots in the front line, then it can be really difficult to get damage through, and having air units in the backline to supplement that is usually really strong against these unitless decks.
I imagine we're just going to see the B-17F come out from TangTang, present another unit that can't be dealt with, but TangTang saying no, potentially. Just opting for burn damage.
Yeah, and the heal is definitely important. It goes from 2 armaments to 3 armaments worth of damage, 16 being a crucial number.
That's true. And it does force Baron to have some heal or an answer for this 6/6 fighter in the backline.
So what big impactful orders does TangTang have that Baron is potentially afraid of? Obviously Baron doesn't really have a better option than Ultra, but I'm curious what Baron is hoping it might stop.
TangTang does run a copy of We Can Do It in his deck, I believe. Let me check just to verify that. Yes, 1 copy of We Can Do It. There is not much else. There's also the Attack in the Colonies as the other relevant order.
Baron is really, really close, but without some way to prevent this 10 damage coming in between the I believe it's a P51 and the M4.
Yeah, and
Baron needs to find a solution for one of them to survive the turn.
it looks like he may have to ASW patrol and take the risk. No, opting for the battery and the seat patrol instead. But that does buff the board.
TangTang does have the ability to play that B17 and attack with it, but at the end of the day, it does the same amount of damage as attacking with the M4, and TangTang doesn't have the credits to attack with both.
And Baron will have the opportunity to potentially win this game next turn. He has an armaments in the deck. If he finds armaments and Sea Patrol, one of them drawn off the ATS, he wins this game. That's, of course, very unlikely, but it is an option and it can happen.
That is not going to be enough. Enough to trigger the ATS to survive.
If you Lend-Lease, is there anything he can find? He's already used the Monty to play around Ultra earlier in the game.
I think for the gunship mission first, to maximize the number of draws. Oh,
And he
wait a
finds
minute.
enough burn to win, but
He
wait.
played
Oh,
Monty.
sorry, Monty was
Oh,
in the
that was
game
from the
before.
last
My bad.
game.
My
Oh,
apologies. Of course, there's no Ultra in this deck. It's US main. My apologies. And he found the burn in hand, but the B17F on 13 credits was too much, and TangTang takes it 3-2. An incredibly tight finish in a nail-biting game.
That was a heck of a hard-fought series across the board. I mean, it goes to show why both of those players have made it to where they are today. Starry, you had mentioned before the game a little bit around how that unitless deck was mainly meant to target some of those discard, more control type of options. Is it just a question of, Baron had a hard time getting it through because that's just the discard stuff just didn't work yesterday? There isn't a lot of that in the semifinals and probably even less of it going forward in the finals today.
yeah, it seems like, J. King was one of the primary users of these discard decks, and we saw where it ended up, unfortunate for him. But yeah, we're seeing the sort of revival of some of these more aggressive strategies. And it's great to see, but unfortunately, when you tech your lineup specifically to deal with discard, which, given the information that he had, I don't think was necessarily a bad decision, but it was sort of punished here.
Based on what we saw at the OCC clash, it makes perfect sense. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out today. Berto, you did mention you had been practicing a little bit with Baron yesterday, just getting ready for this matchup against TangTang. Did Baron have a similar type of challenge in trying to get that unitless deck through? Or did it work a little bit differently when you were scrimmaging?
Well, we played this matchup a few times that we saw at the end here, and it really just came down to, does that M4A1 come down on turn 4? If it doesn't, there's a lot of ways to win very easily, even with Commonwealth, and if it does, then it's winnable, but it's really hard. And we saw that Baron was very close, but the B17F just barely stopping Baron from taking that game at the end.
Absolutely. Definitely felt winnable, but sorry, you called it out that the probability was slim, but there were outs, there were options. Just didn't quite work out for Baron. Nonetheless, we will see Baron again in our bronze match. So let's bring up the bracket here and show you where we are at. So huge congrats goes to TangTang, who will be competing for our $1,000 grand prize here in the finals in just a little bit. Baron, you see, going over to the bronze matchup. But next up, we've got Ozzy against No5, and I am joined here by Spooz and by Bubbles to break down this matchup. So, welcome back, gents. We've got Ozzy, we've got No5. We haven't actually seen Ozzy's lineup yet, as he did end up getting the bye due to the disqualification in the quarterfinals. So let's why don't we dive into our matchup here and let's take a look at Ozzy and get familiar with our last new competitor. There you see somebody who's competed for quite some time. There, 17,000 total matches, a 68% win rate, coming in at the second qualification spot here in the Ultimate. Bubbles, anything to add when it comes to Ozzy here?
No, I mean, as he's a well-known player at this point, they've been here, done that, and this is just sort of what you expect from your career stats from most players in the Ultimate. You know, we've got very high win rate, we've got obviously top 8 Ultimate finish. That's a little bit necessary for playing in the Ultimate, of course. And then favorite cards, actually, where we see the most variation in people. And as you're going for that USA Frontline staple and Stars and Stripes.
So why don't we continue on with Ozzy here and break down their deck lineup again? First time that we see it here, and so Bubbles, what do we got?
So on the left, we have what I think are going to be sort of two more fan favorites, and then on the right, we've got things which people might be a little bit sort of less excited to see. We're going to start here with this USA Italy ramp deck. Now, USA Italy ramp has had its time in competitive. It has been seen in OCCs before, but this was back when you had Man Nostrum. Man Nostrum just enabled you to do these incredibly large amounts of heals very, very easily. But we've seen the meta, you know, we've seen discard come into the meta. We've seen people trying to counter discard. And something which counters discard as well as countering discards counters is a nice ramp deck. And this is what we see here. We do have the naval engagements, which as a late game card, they just absolutely destroy these sort of mirror matches or against anything slower, taking out your opponent's entire support line and repairing any units which are damaged in yours. We do also have Night Bombing, which is a nice removal piece and throws all the units around on the board. And then, yeah, we've got things like Special Delivery, War Machine, a very nice early game. And we do see quite a few new cards here as well, the Pathfinders, and then obviously the P47D. Oh, sorry, I believe that's the older one, the P51B, which did do a fair amount of work last game. So this deck, I'm excited to see it here. It's a very fun deck to play. It's a very fun deck to watch, especially because you can fit these sort of heavier cards with stuff like Seaborn and B17 into the deck. We then have the sort of opposite. It's a Brit USA ramp deck. You get access to ASW Patrol when USA is ally. We did see people experiment a little bit with USW Patrol in USA main. It's just not there. Without that removal piece that you get from the ASW, it's just not worth it. This is a far more sort of control-y deck than the USA Italy one, I find, because you have things like AoE, you have healing, you have the Comet. Obviously, Italy does have some healing, but it doesn't have the same flash healing that Brit has. Britain, you're able to use things like a honey or sort of fortification, which we don't actually see in many of these decks at the moment, but Sincerely Yours fills the same role where you can heal very suddenly out of nowhere. Whereas the USA Italy deck is more of a slow burn with the healing. You've got things like the 7th Alpini, and these sort of things to heal yourself up again. So this is the more exciting decks for me personally. These are the ones I'm more interested to see and the ones I'm hoping get through, because I find these ramp decks very enjoyable to watch. I think it's interesting when there's such a large amount of credits, especially in the Brit one, when you have quite a large hand size due to the card draw, how many different routes and options there are. It makes things very difficult for you to figure out what's going on, but it also makes things difficult for your opponent to figure out all the different lines you can take. And then we have Japan Germany discard and Germany Japan discard. They're fairly similar decks. They're sort of mirrors of each other. This Japan main one, you've got a little bit more sort of early game AoE because you have things like the Shinano. You've got things like Audacity, which is quite a strong removal piece. I think this one's slightly better in the early game. But overall, they're very, very similar similar decks, using cards like Island Defense to stabilize their healing, discard to quickly bring down their opponent's hand size, and then you just win through sort of sheer value through that. They're very meta at the moment. I'm sure most people have seen these, but we have seen them having not too much success today or yesterday as well in this tournament. So it's going to be very interesting to see, can Azzy make these work, or is Azzy going to run into the same issues most people seem to be running with these?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bubbles. Let's take a look at the other side and go and take a peek at Noin. Again, Noin, no stranger to the competitive scene with 18,000 total matches. That huge, nearly 75% win rate, qualifying here in fourth for the ultimate. We made a joke yesterday about how many times no one can squeeze War Machine into their lineup, and I think the answer was twice. Spooz, why don't you break down exactly where we are going to find War Machine and what no one is bringing here today in our second semifinal?
Yeah, so known, well known for whenever there's US as a main faction or ally nation, he's just somehow trying to sneak in War Machine, and that's what we see in the first deck here on the left. It's a Brit US ramp deck with 4x War Machine. Similar deck that Azi is just bringing just a lot of value cards and a lot of elites, so not a deck that a newer player can ever afford here. But as Bubble said, it's really enjoyable to watch just these big units coming down, these big effects like ASW Patrol, giving you 3 credit slots, and also just removing a unit. And if you have Quartermasters on board, even giving you a 3-card draw. So there's a lot of cool combos that you can do with this deck, and definitely one of the more fun decks to watch. Then we have a deck that I think was banned all the time yesterday, and we did not see it in action at least once. It is Soviet Japan Self-Damage. A deck we've seen for a while now. It even just survived the rotation and the new expansion. Got some new cool cards like the Dragon Slayer, Island Defense, just to have, first of all, the big fighter there just gives you another threat on the board for the opponent that he needs to take care of. And Island Defense just, gives you a little bit more security after just damaging your HQ, just for yourself over time. So just offers a lot of healing there to just, give you a little bit more time to bring out your big units. Then we have an interesting, Bubbles called it mid-range yesterday, but it looks really weird. It has a lot of early game. It has the Signal Regiment, Type 93, just the usual Jaggro stuff. But then just 4 War Machines and kind of a late game finisher with the Bolts of the Ranks and the Shiden in it. So really hard for the opponent to deal with. Like any guard is just bounced by the half track, and then you can do the Bolster Shiden combo, plus the constant damage from the Signal Regiment and the early pressure with the early game units. Really versatile deck, and I'm excited to see this one in action, and hopefully it's not getting banned. Because 4 War Machines do not seem too good in this, but I think no one definitely has an idea what the task of this card is in this deck. The cool combo, obviously, turn 2 War Machine, and then push out one of these strong 4-drops like 5th Rangers or the Dragon Slayer, Key 83. That's one of the combos you're mostly looking for in the early game. And then we have a deck that I'm looking forward to see as well. It is a German and Soviet pincer deck with 3x war production. We just saw this in action yesterday and just saw how strong the war production can be there. It can offer you a very, very strong early game. Also in the mid-range, it is really strong. Just push out all these stuff. We just saw 2 Gebirgs, no Panzer Grenadiers coming out yesterday, buffing the whole board by +2/+2. It's just insane what can go on with this deck. And Astrakhan definitely being the VIP in this deck with 4 copies of it. It's just a 2 credit 3/3 infantry unit, which is on itself really strong, but whenever this is receiving a pincer effect, it just gains +1/+2. And that's obviously completely strong and can get out of hand really quickly for the opponent. So this is one of your main threats on the board, and your opponent really needs to take care of it. Otherwise, he's just losing to this unit alone.
And we saw that pincer deck snowball yesterday, as you mentioned, Spooz. So no one bringing a fun little variety here. Let's dive into the bans. Let's see exactly what these players will have access to when they go head to head. So no one is losing that Brit US ramp deck, as he is losing the Japan Germany discard. Bubbles, this is interesting to me, as the discard decks, to your point, didn't perform particularly well yesterday. Ozzy did get the buy, so didn't have to actually compete with these lists. I'm curious as to why no one decided, hey, I still want to ban one of these, even though they didn't see a lot of success yesterday.
I mean, even when decks don't see as much success as you're expecting, they're still very powerful decks. They're still something that have been played for a while and have been going around for a while, and for good reason. They're strong decks. So I think it's reasonable to decide I'm still going to ban discard, even with the subpar performance, especially when you don't have something like USA Frontline as, a classic counter to it. And then when you look at between Germany main and Japan main, the Japan main is just moving a little bit quicker because you have cards like Shinano, you've got things like Audacity. They help you sort of counteract the board early on just a little bit better. You don't have to rely on these 24ths quite as much as this German version does. So I think it makes sense to ban one of the discard decks, and Sudden Strike as well is a very important card to think about here. If you're going to put down Astracans, if you're going to put down these early game units, you've got the Signal Regiment in the Japan deck. Sudden Strike is going to be a really real concern of yours. So I think it makes sense to get rid of one of the discard decks, just bin that. And a lot of your decks, they can suffer to it as well. I find self damage, it can suffer to discard because your opponent just doesn't put down units. You go for this early game snowball, and then in the mid to late game, they're just going to discard your hand. And you just, it's not this ideal scenario that you want compared to, say, matching up against one of other decks in the lineup.
So the question becomes, Bubbles, now you ban one of the discard decks, you still have to beat the other one, in theory. You could also just lose to the other one and move on and just beat the other two decks. And we're going to find out exactly how this plays out as we get into our second semifinal here with Noan taking on Ozzy.
And straight into with the discard as well. So we're going to get to see straight away if no one is able to use this sort of Japan aggressive deck to beat down this Germany-Japan discard deck. We see Island Defense as a potential card in Azzy's opener, but also quite a potential strong start here for No and having the Signal Regiment as well as the 15th Cavalry. How do you feel about this matchup, Spooz?
Looking at Noan's starting hand, I think he has a good chance to, just win by just tempo. I'm just curious why he kept the War Machine without having a strong 4-drop in hand. I think I would have liked him to maybe mulligan the War Machines as well, just to find even more early pressure. But looking at Ozzy's hand here, he has the air superiority, the sudden strike that can get rid of the Signal Regiment. So I think Noan kind of might lose. That fifth range,
heavy, nice
as if he knew that he would find that one.
Interesting. Interesting though to see Azzy not playing the Arado before playing the removal piece. Is there much reason to hold on to this Arado, or is there not much reason to hold on to this?
Honestly, I don't know why he did not play it. Like, what would be a reason to keep it and not have it on board just for the draw and that is as an additional body? So
I mean, it's not like you have to worry about Panzer 35Ts and things to kill it or Whirlwind. So I potentially would like to see that come out that turn.
Looks like a slight mistake there on Ozzy's end. And yeah, this 5th Ranger's actually pretty good here for Noan, because none of the cards in Ozzy's hand can deal with this at the moment.
That is very slow as well. So
I
now,
would be excited to know what the other options were, right? If you pick a 9-drop here, and I mean, there are some really strong airplanes in Noan's deck here, but turn 9, I mean.
But there are a lot of German elites which just aren't useful in these sort of scenarios. You know, things like a lot of the tanks, you know, you got the Greif, you got the Tigers, these certainly are just way too slow. But even things like a lot of the artillery, like the autocannon, it's not quite what you want. However, Schwabel, like you say, that's a really slow pickup here.
So for Noan, it's really paying out that a lot of the units have 0 operation cost, including the 5th Rangers, can play the artillery as well as the Signal Regiment here. And now we're already in a situation where there are a lot of threats on the board and just 8 damage presented by pure units that are on board.
I wonder if you just Wolfpack. You could certainly go for the Wolfpack and worry about the board later.
I mean,
it's greedy, but you know, you've got the Island Defense. There's a low chance of you know, taking more damage than there is on board. Because, you know, no one could have the single copy of their Type 93, but it would blitz out any additional damage.
Okay, is Yellow also good here?
He scared both of us. He scared both of us with that one.
I mean, it's not like I would have played a Sherman without an US unit in the front line in the last week, so I kind of could have related here, but no, definitely not doing this in an OCC Ultimate semifinals here. There has to be a Japan unit in the front line, otherwise the expansion is not going to draw you 2 cards. No one pushing up the 24s and presenting 7 damage in the front line now, plus 2 damage from the artillery.
I mean, we've all done it. The question is whether we've done it with the cameras on us, you know, because when you do it without the cameras on you, at least you can brush it aside and just pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah, that's the downside of being a streamer, right?
Yeah, you know, sometimes when I make a little misplay and you know, like I have a draw card in my hand and I should have drawn first, and I get to the end of my turn, I think to myself, I'm not going to play the draw card because I don't want my opponent to know that I made the mistake. I want to keep the mistake to myself.
It goes that far, okay.
The embarrassment of it. We see now this signal regiment dying, and yeah, there's a lack of blitz damage about these 35Ts or whirlwinds because you have USA. Obviously, you can do the Shiden later in the game, but you need access to that first. And I think there's the potential here, as he can stabilize, for no one just to struggle to find that last bit of damage that they need. The question is just, can Azzy stabilize or not?
Yeah, because next turn there's a difficult decision here. With the Skybarons, you can kill the Dragon Slayer. With the Island Defense, you can heal yourself for 10, but that's at 8 credit combo. So you have to decide what you want to do there. And definitely excited to see what route Azzy is taking here.
This is a very brave option, going for the Sky Barons and the Arado and not finding anything to deal with the board, which leaves lethal available for Noah next turn. And that's going to be game 1 to Noah, and beating the discard deck already. Obviously, as he does get more attempts with it. However, if you're Noah here, you have to be very happy with this start. I think this may have been the weakest of Noah's deck in this series, and he's managed to take game 1 with it.
Yeah, in a dominant fashion, and that War Machine, keeping that in hand, really paid out with the 5th Rangers found on turn 3 there.
In true Noah fashion, you always keep the War Machine. I just worry for the day that no one gets presented 4 War Machines, because you know he's going to struggle to put any of them back.
At some point it will happen. So like statistically, there's a chance it will happen at some point, and then we will see what Knowing is doing out of that. But for now, 1-0 lead over Azzy here. It just felt like Azzy came not really into this match, did some slight mistakes there maybe with the Aradu, which not had any effect in the end, because on turn 4 where he played it, I guess, he could have not done anything else with it. But I think those are the nuances that can just make you a winner or a loser of a match. And Known with a really good start here. Another time, Astrakhan, he has the Jäger Regiment, he has the Gebirgs Pioneers as well. So he can play Astrakhan plus Jäger Regiment on turn 2 if he wants to, if the Gebirgs Pioneers survive.
Oh, but finding Sudden Strike here for Azzy is going to be very useful in this matchup.
Look at
But with the
Known's
war production,
10.
I think maybe... Oh, I'm tempted to 35T that turn, but instead decide to go for the slightly slower play of the Astrakhan. And I think there's a lot of good logic to this. The sooner you play it, the sooner you can get it up in that front line and hitting face. And as he presented with a couple different options, I think this countermeasure is the best move. It's just going to be interesting to see if no one takes countermeasures into account and how they play the turn. I think you ideally lead with the other pincer unit when thinking about countermeasures. So I do think this -1 op is a fairly unfortunate thing to lose. Oh, this Sudden Strike is going to be huge for Azzy.
Yeah. Also nice, I think a lot of players would have just played the Sudden Strike on the Astrakhan. But this being an infantry unit, which can only move or attack in the same turn, just said Azzy that, yeah, you cannot attack with it to my HQ anyways, and I have the Sudden Strike available, and maybe he's playing more pincer effects on it that are kind of wasted now, and this is exactly what we saw here. A really good Sudden Strike there, a lot of value on just 2 credits on the Astrakhan.
Playing the 35T this turn, starting to try and get some face damage in, but it's looking at that point in the game where Azzy's high value cards may start to beat out Noah. Putting down a 6/5 fighter. Typically, when you play this pincer deck, you want to be way ahead on stats, and you want to have your units far larger than your opponents. But we see now Azzy actually the one having the bigger units down on board.
But actually, a lot of these units on board here. And as he
Sure.
only has one Dragon Slayer that has to take care of 5 units here. I mean,
He'll
Özkan,
manage. He'll manage. It's capable.
yeah, yeah, he
We'll
has air
get there.
superiority, he has the Heinkel. So
I'd
good
be
tools.
tempted to just Heinkel this turn because it saves you a little bit of damage to the face, and you can take out this free one in the front line.
That's what we're going to see here. Gives you Spoils of War, that gives you choices for later in the game. But I think on turn 7 and 8 we might just see the Annihilation coming down.
Thinking about going for the Pioneers instead, but no, yeah, taking out... I don't think the credit is as useful at this stage in the game. Any BF109G is actually a really, really powerful find here for Noen, because it's going to allow Noen to buff up this 35T, go for the trade, and draw an additional card. And
Oh, do you do it on the Gebirgs Pioneers? Just to get rid of the Dragon Slayer? Or... Oh, he's
always going for the Catty.
That's awesome.
Doesn't hit the 50-50, which is going to prevent the Astrakhan from going to the front line, and means you do have to trade away your unit there.
And there comes another big fighter here for Azi in the FW. Finding another 35T.
I'd like to see the 101 come out on this this Kyusha if possible, because you've seen a sudden strike already, and it can get really scary really quickly. I think there's a fair amount of logic to playing it on the fighter as well, but yeah, when you put it on this, look how much damage that is. And this allows trading into the FW to draw an additional card again.
This time hitting
Recoup
twice on the
credits.
Kyusha.
And typically you want to get one proc at least from this BF. To get 2 procs, that's sort of an ideal situation. I don't think I've ever seen it hit 3 procs once, so no one's going to be very happy about that.
Annihilation time. So what is the best target? Your Katyusha is really scary because it has the 101st.
You might be
pincer
better
here?
off killing the 101st though, because the Kyusha can die next turn to this this Maelstrom. However, the 101 would survive. You do take an additional 2 to 3 damage by not killing it this turn, but I think it's worth it in the long run, especially when you do have a fair amount of HP to sit on.
Marta found, but no target to kill here for Noen. So I think the only option is go face. Holding that Marta back, because it's lethal anyways. Oh, he's not holding it back? Okay. I would have loved to see it. Yeah.
And here comes the Maelstrom, clearing the board. Potentially he was worried about his hand getting discarded. That may have been why he played it. Worried about something removing it from his hand. I think you're okay with that if that happens, just because of how much stuff you have on the board.
So there's nothing in Noen's board that can deal 3 damage directly to face. There is
You
another
can
35T.
do Enigma autocannon if you get autocannon later on. You do also have the Kyusha and the 35Ts along with the 101. So it is possible to get this 3 damage very quickly. But Azzy is gonna have plenty of ways of controlling
There
this
comes
game
the
now.
Hipper, denying the draw for Noen. So you still only have the Panzer Grenadiers available for turn 8 here or turn 9.
And you're going to bet a case yellow next turn as well, so you have to redeploy this Panzer Grenadier now. And the longer you try to find this Enigma, the smaller Azzy's hand is going to be getting, because Azzy is going to be desperately trying to dump their hand size to prevent this Enigma play. And when Enigma no longer draws you a large amount of cards, this game essentially becomes over. Choosing to not play the Panzer Grenadier, and this is now a very quick clock here, as he's going to have lethal in just a few turns, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think the only good thing that Noen can top deck here is Enigma. That might give him a comeback chance. But now even a unit in the front line.
Oh, but he's played it. If you hold that back and it doesn't get discarded, you can top deck a Kyusha and you can find lethal on a 50-50.
There's only one Katyusha in Noen's deck, unfortunately. So
only the
this
one.
is not an out any longer. So I think only Enigma into autocannon. There is no Enigma as well. So I think Noen has no chance to come back here, I guess. So this is kind of a win or lose early scenario deck from Noen here. if you find yourself in such a situation, I think there's mostly nothing you can do. Even if you top deck autocannon, you have to play it, and then it dies. If you don't play it, it might get discarded. So really tough. Do we see Leopold here? He hovered over it. That will give him lethal next turn. Goes for the Schwalbe instead.
I mean, there's so many potentials here for lethal. There's the auto cannon.
But it can do nothing.
Fortunately, yeah, without 3 other units in hand for no one, it can better find lethal.
That was a
And
really close one.
That evens it to a 1-1 now. And we've got 2 aggressive decks here for Noan and 2 ramp decks here for Azzy. So it's going to be very interesting to see if Azzy's able to survive these early games and slow down Noan's very quick advance when both very high tempo decks.
Yeah, we have to be honest, right? Like, this was probably the best attempt from Azzy's lineup to just deal with these aggressive decks from Known. It might be harder to deal with this with the ramp decks. I mean, the US one has quite a few good options here in line for a day in case the Astrakhan is getting really big. Lateshima, 6th, 7th Alpini Regiment, like this German deck is not playing a lot of bounce, so any big guards are actually not too bad. So yeah, I think this German deck was one of the best answers, and it will be maybe a little bit harder to deal with this deck in the next match here. No one's sticking with the Pincer deck.
Oh, and you don't really want any of this if you're Azzy here. Possibly the slowest hand I've seen in a long time. Noan full mulligan as well, trying to find something more tempo based, such as the war productions. We see both players here having a relatively slow start.
But no one is really good in constantly finding the Astrakhans here in starting hand.
He did mulligan his entire starting hand. He threw it all back. We're going to see an Astrakhan come down, but Azzy, fortunately for them, going to be able to answer it straight away.
Good use of attack in the colonies here.
Gives yourself just a little bit more HP to work with, as well as removing this unit. But Noan still has a lot of tempo available in their hand. Going to instantly buff up the Astrakhan.
And that is a little bit harder to remove now for Azzy. He has the 5th Rangers, but this is only having 4 attack. Might just play it as an 8/8.
Or you just go for the Stars and Stripes. Clear the back line, you know, and then get ready. Clear the Jaegers.
But then you still have a 4/3 to deal with in the front line. Place it as an 8/8.
He goes for the sensible play rather than the bubbles.
Yeah, knowing that no one has not any bounce in the deck, this is not the worst play here. An 8/8 is a lot of beef that you can trade into the opponent's units.
It does cost most of your turn to use it, unfortunately, for Azzy. I'm curious if no one's just going to try and flood the board as much as possible. You can put 3 to 4 units in the front line this turn, depending on if you want to start growing with the 22nd.
I would love to see double Panzer 35T here, just for maximum pressure.
Yeah, look at it. It's a lot of pressure.
Like, as you said, it will cost Azzy 4 credits next turn out of 6 available to operate the 5th Rangers. And you can still play the 22nd next turn if you have no one here, or you can just put up even more pressure and play by playing the 100 first.
Oh, with the war production, though, they're going to be able to dump so much of their hand this turn. There is the potential for a Stars and Stripes to clear the backline very nicely, but you're only going to be on 8 credits next turn. You're not going to be able to afford to play the Stars and Stripes and trade into the front line.
So what do you do if in no one? Do you play 101st Katyusha maybe to protect it against... Like, if you do it on the front line unit, it's only giving you 1 additional damage?
I think 101 Kyusha is a fairly sensible play. You then play the war production. You can use all your credits up this turn. Don't worry too much about the 22nd right now. Because, you know, yeah, card draw is really, really powerful and really nice, but you can also just pressure down the board and put Azzy in a really difficult scenario Putting down the Kyusha this turn and buffing it also means any potential guards as he plays in the future are going to be less powerful.
Not even playing the war production. That's interesting.
Night Bombing is a very interesting card here.
Ooh, especially with the shuffle effect. So you can have, I don't know, Katyusha frontline and everything else goes to the backline.
Find some very nice cards though. Goes for the card draw. United We Stand, I think, is going to be far more in Azzy's favor. Sure, no one gets the credit slot too, but with cards like the Night Bombing, the Seaboard Invasion, Azzy desperately needs these credit slots. But also finding ways of clearing the board and healing this and attack the colonies.
Pretty good hand here from Azzy.
How do you feel about Stars and Stripes as well as a there you go, you read my mind. Stars and Stripes United.
So that leaves Known with 2 units in the front line here.
I wouldn't hate just putting down Marder and Stug. I don't dislike this play. I think you need to start re-establishing the board. You've seen the Stars and Stripes come down. You just have to start putting units down now. And we know that Azzy has really useful tools in their hand. But if you're no one here, you're not aware of this situation, and you need to do what you can.
Oh, he's probably going BF 101st on the 35T.
Oh, what?
Just to
Double
have...
trade. You could double trade into the 5th Rangers, draw 2 additional cards. You do get rid of your own front line. However, 2 additional cards. But no, yeah, just going to go for the Martyr and the Stug.
So the pins are obviously not doing too much here. It's not protecting against attack on the colonies. And yeah,
This
that's a big
card
problem
is
for no one here.
Serious problem. It's a very nice find. However, Night Bombing is going to answer it almost immediately.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a downside of no one's deck. Like whenever you get to turn 7, 8, and your opponent's dropping 1 big guard.
You do have to play this war production first. Very important you play the war production first.
Yeah,
do
otherwise
2
you would
damage to the
discard the
guard.
spoils. Yeah.
And I think with the information you have, you take that 101 because it's going to allow you to just keep buffing up your units. And I think it's going to be time to roll the board around, see where everything ends up. We may see some trades first. I'm very excited. Have we seen a Night Bombing before in competitive? I've certainly not seen it before.
I like the animation on Night Bombing here. Look at this.
Yeah, you got the squint to see what's going on. And it swaps the other 2 units, putting the 101 in the front line and the Jaeger back into the support line. And that's actually going to work out really quite nicely for Noan, because now you can get quite a high value trade here.
Yeah, that keeps the buff on the pincer on the 101st. Can even give it pincer now. So the 5th Ranger cannot really attack into it.
All the pincers. However, Azzy still has a fairly strong turn here. You can just go for the Seaboard and send these both to hand, but you can also just trade away and put down this P47. You don't even need to trade into this ambush unit in the front line. Kill the Jaeger. And yeah, put down the P47.
Yeah, I mean, you can easily do this because no one only has infantry unit and this 1 BF is not killing him next turn. Also, no one is not having Blitzkrieg in the deck, which, yeah, shuts down a lot of potential OTK turns here. Yeah, we saw this deck perform really well from no one, but we also definitely see the weaknesses here. Pathfinder's on board now.
I'd like to see the M401 come out. I don't think there's too much logic to holding it back. And a Marder here is really what you need if you're Noan.
22nd, also not too bad. Panzer Grenadiers would have been also great just to.
I think if no one hits face this turn, they probably lose the game. And there you go. No one unfortunately hits face, and I think that seals it right there. Spawning in this guard here for Azzy, which is going to allow Azzy to play Seaborn Invasion and push up a unit to the front line with just so many stats on board. With 5th Rangers off the top, they're able to go for the 5th Rangers 8-8 to the front line.
And that's
Yeah,
definitely a big thing to deal with.
Having the Seaborn Invasion and the guard on board, because that means you can play Seaborn, see what you get out of the Seaborn, and if you need to protect the units, you can push the guard up and protect the units that you got from Seaborn as well. And Azzy able to take 2 games now on a 2-1 up against no one. So we're going to have Britain ramp up against 2 aggressive decks here for no one, and there is a fair amount of defensive strategy in the deck. The Churchill Arthray could potentially be really, really strong, but as well as cards like Monty and the Sincerely Yours, I think they're going to be cards to look out for in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, also Black Watch and the Gwen Guards. 4
you have a
threats there
lot
in the
of
deck.
guards.
A lot of beef cards that you need to fight yourself through.
A very tempting hand here from Noah. I think I'd like to see the 35T put back just to try and find this war production. We do see Azzy having a relatively strong hand, but not quite finding all of the tools they need. If you have these 2 honeys and this war machine, you kind of want to see like some sort of draw engine to go with it. But ASW Patrol, not really what you're looking for here.
Found the Churchill.
No one, I think, is looking very good already with the Astrakhan and the 35T next turn. It's going to be able to push up a lot of stats into the front line. Sexton is a very strong find for Azzy, but it may just be a little bit too slow, as no one may be able to answer the Sexton by the time it's come down onto the board. And look at these stats in the front line. Any honeys that come down are just going to be food for this Marder.
Hawk, not too bad of a find here.
Certainly not too bad.
Can get rid of the 35T, but then this Astrakhan will get another buff next turn from the 128.
You don't even need to go for the buff because there's not anything to blitz out. I think you're better off going for the Marder, getting the trade, and pushing the front line. Because I do believe you want to trade this turn. Oh, he's going all in. He's going all in. This is going to be very unfortunate for no one when the Sexton comes down, because if no one doesn't have a way of answering that Sexton, it doesn't matter how big this Astrakhan is, it's not going to do what you need it to. Now,
so no one definitely needs another 35T.
35T would do the job really, really nicely.
This is
However, there's still a lot of units here for no one. You can push pretty much everything to the front line and pressure a lot of face damage.
Only problem is all of them have 1 health, so 1 supply shortage for Azzy here clears the whole board.
It's certainly problematic. This is where you would like to see like a Panzer Grenadiers to push them out of this 1 health range. But we do see a lot of units on the board here. No, and finding another ASW patrol. And he's going to need to start clearing this board. You are going to... Oh, he's got to play around ambush, as he's got to be very careful here, because it's easy to make this slip up. You have to kill the Jaeger and take the 6 damage. Because for a second, he hovered over one of the ambush units, and my heart, it flickered a little bit, Spooz. But finding the 101 means they can free up the Astrakhan if they desire. Put down the 101 on one of these free ones in the front line. It will allow it to trade into the Sexton. Obviously, though, Azzy starting to reach that point in the game where these bigger, more expensive tools like the Churchill are going to be really, really powerful. And you may find yourself in a position, if you get supply shortage, where one of these, the ASW patrols is like a guaranteed kill on an Astrakhan.
You might just go for the Sexton kill here just to free the Astrakhan.
If you go for the Sexton kill, do you want to play it on this one or the other one? The only reason to play it on the 0 operation cost one is if you're planning on playing the Marder as well.
Yeah, I think that what is known considering here. Doing it on a 0 up cost and play an additional body. We can also go for the Marder to give you the draw here. But I think at this point you just, maybe Stuck would have also been nice. Oh, there's a 35T.
Here's the Arfrey.
Oh, he forgot to push up the Jäger regiment before attacking with the ambush guy.
Oh, he did. You are absolutely correct. But now it means he can replay the Jaeger regiment and get the pincer effect
So
again.
it was all planned. He just sold it as a mistake, but it was obviously planned.
Oh my god, look at the size of this unit in the front line. Pincer into pincer. We've got an 813 ambush, heavy armor, 0 operation cost.
So, I mean, as he kind of has to take the shot with the ASW patrol here.
It's really quite a problem.
That's like a 1 in 5.
Not for, yeah, without Monty, you have to take the ASW patrol. It's got to be a 1 in 6. You can't trade into the ambush unit first.
You can trade into the
trade into the
35T.
35T. My apologies. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have
And then you
1 in
have
5.
to roll this 1 in 5.
I mean, the guard is not protecting you here.
And here we go, ASW patrol.
And
It is
you
the
hit it!
Astrakhan taking out
my
the
God,
biggest threat on board.
You got to be kidding me. 20% chance.
As he finding exactly what they needed from that, and it's going to put them onto a huge amount of credits as well. No one now has to figure out how to get the most out of what they have. I feel like potentially just drop the Marder on board. You no longer try and face down as he's healthed quickly, because sure, you can go for the 101 and do a lot of damage to face this turn, but I don't see you winning through that path. I think you just have to trade away with Marder. Oh, you've got to be feeling very bad about that if you're
tilted that I would have been known here. Oh
That's
my God.
very, very unfortunate here.
Panzer Grenadiers, we just saw what this card is able to do yesterday, but this is not surviving now. Oh, so
Well, you can hit face with it.
he's just giving a pincer, so it's growing when...
Yeah, you're going to grow your board and no one deciding to try and rush down face. Put Azzy down to 2. Take in mind, no one... I believe they still have auto... Or did they use autocannon this game? There's been a couple games, but I know they...
No, it's been in the game before. He still has autocannon in the deck.
You got autocannon, you got 35
No, wait,
Ts,
no,
Kyusha.
he's not having it. It got killed by
Okay, so
the
you got
Sexton, I think.
Kyusha, you got 35 Ts, you have some ways of blitzing out damage. However, Azzy, they are going to be able to push the front line this turn if they desire. The question is just how do you want to trade into these? I think maybe you go for the Mosquito and you push up the Arvray if you want the front line.
Yeah, I like that line. Mosquito, the front line unit, and push the Arvray up.
Blackwatch is good against Panzer 35T, but that's about all it does in this position. Because, you know, no one doesn't exactly have a lot of orders in his deck. And a Kyusha, that bypasses it.
Yeah, tough.
Okay, hear me out.
For Ozzy.
Hear me out. Lend-Lease for healing and then trade the honey. This is the bubbles play. Yeah, you overdraw. We don't worry about the overdraw. Puts us up to a whopping at 7 HP.
I like that line, to be honest. It gives you 7 HP, which is out of range of a lot of known tools that he has here. But also that Blackwatch stops a lot of potential... Although it would be a risk against Katyusha 101st, for sure. It gives you a 50% chance to lose here. And we just saw what happens if you have an 80% chance to lose.
we have seen that already. Azzy here though, they do have this second honey and the third honey with the Lend-Lease. They're going to be able to deploy double honey and Lend-Lease if they want to. I'm curious though if that's even the right move. because there's a lot of threats on board. You kind of want to mosquito this ambush unit. You kind of want to get rid of this Marder as well.
Yeah, the problem are the two backline units. If you trade a Blackwatch into any of the bigger units here, yeah, keeping it at 4, but that opens up a 101st now. He really needs healing. He needs to heal this turn. I think anything else could be a mistake and lose the game here.
It's a bit late for healing though, because you've traded twice into the front line. If you go for the healing route, that only leaves you with 1 credit, and you're very open to being blown out on board. I think once you started trading like this into the board, you need to commit. Oh, I really feel like you had to draw sooner.
That's
And
lethal with the
that's going to be
101st.
lethal. Yeah, that's going to be lethal. And Azzy here, just getting caught up in this last moment, making I think a slight misplay, and no one able to take advantage of that, put it to a 2-2, and we're now going to see South Damage, Soviet South Damage, up against this Brit ramp deck. And this is for a place in the finals in the OCC Ultimate. There's a lot on line for both these players. First place takes home $1,000. Which is, I think, about 1/10 of our monthly paycheck for casting. You know, we're really bringing it home.
Wait, you get paid for that?
oh, let's change the topics, please, quick before.
Okay, finally we see that self-damage deck in action. The first appearance in 2 days so far.
Yeah, it's been banned a lot, and then the one time it's not been banned, there's been better opportunities here for Noan. Now we see an interesting hand for Azzy. War Machine, really, really powerful. Blackwatch, it can be quite useful against self-damage if you can get it down early enough and self-damage hasn't developed its board, because they have all these 1k removal spells, these removal orders. However, I do agree when going second, chances are no one is going to be already developed enough on board by this point in the game that it's no longer going to be what you need.
I like how most players are just fucking their champion's card back.
Yeah, it's certainly got a certain amount of flash to it.
So what did Azzy win actually? It was not an OCC so far, so it had to be in cards open then, I guess.
Oh, you're testing my old man
but
memory.
I'm just wondering. So maybe someone in the back. We need Jaking here. He's just having all these statistics.
Yeah, he's got his spreadsheets. We're going to see Azzy ramping very, very quickly. You're going to better see a very early carpet bombing. However, when carpet bombing comes out, this does mean this BM13 for Noan becomes incredibly powerful. I'd like to see playing around AoE here. You know there's a lot of it in Azzy's deck. You've seen Azzy just ramp twice. The blowout from a carpet bombing, if you put down this rifle, it's just way too big. Oh.
Ooh.
Oh,
I was wondering if he could maybe play Winter Warfare.
No, it survives. You go for the carpet bombing, and it should survive on 1 health because of the T80.
Let's see how this is. How it resolves.
It doesn't survive. No. That is not how I thought that worked. Do you go for the 34 fair, or do you just go for the artillery? I think there's a fair amount of logic to holding back on, I'm just going for the artillery, starting to beat down. However, Azzy has a lovely USW patrol this turn. I mean, you have no other option. You cannot afford to take 2 damage every single turn. And this is getting to the point where it's starting to look a little bit like Azzy's game. But this SU-76 is very strong here. Just with a Wrath Lightning in hand, as well as being able to put down a Wellington, you can clear the board here.
You can bounce the 6-6, clear the 5-3. Found the guard additionally. Oh, this is not looking good for Noan here.
And this South Damage is such a tempo-based deck, but this Britain deck is currently able to answer things perfectly.
Finding the correct tools and the correct time here for Azzy.
Noan's actually on a 2-turn clock here. So Noan has to play really, really quite quickly to be able to do anything about this.
Red Dawn, able to kill the Wellington at least.
I think you have to take out the Wrath as well. Sitting on 10 HP up against a Wrath Lightning on board is just a little bit too risky. And no, and going all in with the units.
Ooh, find the
Oh,
Lancaster here.
Lancaster. Gonna better put Noan down to 2 HP. And unless Noan can find an island defense, I believe that is going to be GG. And there you go,
Yeah.
Azzy securing themselves a place in the finals, and Noan still going to have a chance for third place, going to be playing up against Baron in the third place matchup.
A really good series, honestly. 5 games, really intense ones.
I think Azzy really showed the power of these ramp decks as well.
Yeah. Congrats. We have our 2 finalists.
We do. As he's showing, you're mentioning the ramp decks, Bubbles. You know, we saw that discard maybe wasn't going as well as people had hoped. We saw a few folks sneak some ramp in, and it seems to be performing fairly well, as are some of the faster decks. Is that just a question of, getting more resources more quickly? Like, what do you think the ramp decks success is because of?
I think there's a mix of things. I think there's certainly new resources available since the expansion came out. I think the reserve list has also affected the meta fairly heavily. We've seen a lot of the more aggressive decks that countered ramp in the past, as well as the mid-range decks, things like Brid Air, not as strong as they were before. Frontline as well, still very powerful, but less consistent. These were things that were quite oppressive to ramp, so ramp struggled against those. With them out the way, ramp can sort of come back a bit more. But also, I've noticed it's fairly common when an expansion drops for ramp to be one of the things which comes to light. And then slowly over time, the ramp evolves and it gets sort of beaten by the meta and it gets pushed back out again. So I'm personally expecting 2 to 3 months of ramp and then ramp to go back to its sort of sideline C. And then we'll wait a year or so. The new ramp will come back and we sort of rinse and repeat. Ramp gets its few months a year where it gets to do things. But I find generally by the time the World Championships come about, ramp has managed to find its way out of the meta again.
Fair enough. So, Spooz, do you think that's just a question of, hey, ramp gets me those resources, I can play around with some new cards? We saw no one bring in a variety of different decks that worked pretty well yesterday. Today ended up hitting a little bit of the wall. We saw self-damage kind of sputter out. We saw, mid-range worked okay. Pincer didn't quite snowball like it did yesterday. Is that just a question of matchup in this scenario?
Yeah, it also depends a little bit on starting hands. Like if you find your ramp cards with your ramp early on, if you just find all your big late game units in the early game and face an aggressive deck, you can't do much. But as he just found the correct mix here of finding ramp and finding early answers, and that what secured him the win here in the end.
Absolutely. Secured him the win and the spot in the grand finals here. So let's bring up the bracket and take a look at where we are at now that the semifinals are complete. We see TangTang versus Ozzy in the finals. TangTang defeating Baron 3-2. Ozzy defeating No One 3-2. A little bit of a different scenario today versus yesterday where we saw a couple of quick blowouts. We're seeing some hard fought battles, and I have no doubt that both the grand finals and the bronze match are going to be the same. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to dive into Baron versus No One to see who can secure third place here, and in the grand finals to see who's going to walk away with $1,000. Welcome back, everybody. I am joined by Berto and by Starry. We are here for our bronze matchup. It might be a bronze match, but a couple bucks on the line here. $500 for third place, $250 for fourth. Not bad for a weekend of cards. So let's just bring up the bracket to refresh you on where we are at. We're going to have Baron here taken on Noen, who we just saw move down to the third place match. So we have, we've got Baron and Noen, TangTang and Ozzy in our finals in just a bit. We'll be going to that match after this bronze match is concluded. That one, we got $1,000 grand prize, $750 for second. So let's dive into Baron versus Noen. Now, we did see Noen just competes. Let's take a quick peek over at Baron's list, get a quick refresher. We've seen them a couple times now, but Starry, why don't you walk us through exactly what Baron is packing here in this bronze matchup?
So Baron's first deck is Japan, Germany, Jagro. It's been a mainstay of tournament cards for a very long time now. And the current iteration is playing lots of one-cost blitz infantry, so that you can get those early expansions out, get your cards on the field, while packing a pretty decent-sized hand, trading stuff away with Martyr, and dropping some nice big-sized planes like Key 45 Dragon Slayer and Key 83. Baron's second deck is US-Germany Frontline, which is, again, super standard by this point. Since the rotation, we've seen the loss of 32nd Infantry, and it's been replaced with Greyhound as well as Gebirgspinne. And that is going to be a strong contender. The next deck is a Britain US unitless deck, which has seen a little bit of a success on ladder, but it definitely seems like a very barren deck. It's going to rely on stalling and pinning your opponent's units while drawing lots of cards, gaining lots of HQ defense, and in the end it's going to look to either Commonwealth your opponent down or to use Gunship Mission and Escort Group and other cards like that to Escort Group choosing armaments, of course, to get that big meaty 8 damage. It is going to look to deal order damage to the opponent's HQ, all while preventing them from attacking your own in order to close out the game. And lastly, we have the interestingly dubbed Femboy Heinz, which is a Germany-Soviet Heinz list. It is relying on Soviets to gain access to 554th Rifle Regiment, which is a zero-cost 1/1 infantry with Blitz, in combination with Iron from the North to create large pressure early in the game. Getting a turn 1 Iron from the North into some amount of tanks can be really hard for your opponent to deal with early on in the game, and the pressure just keeps mounting as after you've dropped your hand, then you get to refill it with Enigma, and it can be very scary. It can put a lot of pressure down very early on in the game.
I love that I legitimately have in my notes this German Soviet deck listed as Femboy Heinz. So I absolutely appreciate that, Starry. I love the authenticity that you're bringing, that you know that the community is calling it this. Let's bring this up. Let's flip over to the other side, take a look at Noen and see what Noen's lineup looks like. We did just see this, but Berto, why don't you take us through a quick refresher here of what Noen's going to be bringing?
Yep, so Noen has a Britain main ramp deck with the Commonwealth as a big finisher, as well as, of course, a lot of other units that can finish off the game, like the Churchill. We have a Soviet Japan self-damage list, making use of the new island defense, although this deck struggles a little bit into ramp decks, things that don't put units down for your self-damage orders to hit quickly. We have a Japan USA, sort of like a Jagro list, except a little bit slower, and even running the War Machine to make it more like a mid-range deck. And finally, we have a Germany-Soviet pincer deck making great use of this 91st Astrakhan, which gets +1/+2 every time it is targeted with a pincer effect. And back to you, Christo.
Thank you so much, Berto. Let's go ahead and see what the bans are going to look like for this matchup here. Baron going to lose the Jaggro list. No one losing the self-damage list here. Starry, let's start with you. If you're in Baron's head, you're looking at no one's lineup and go, yeah, I don't really want to deal with the self-damage. Why would that be?
Well, Baron didn't know that Jaggro was being banned. And the early game, these aggressive decks can really be stopped pretty quickly by self-damage. It can be pretty dangerous to play against self-damage because they can very quickly get these huge units on board, all while denying you access to anything with cards like Red Dawn and Bloody Sickle. And yeah, it's with Baron's lineup, you really got to be careful, make sure that your opponent doesn't high roll you with some cards like Red Dawn into an early 34th guards. So
And Berto, on the other side of things, Baron's Jaggro list getting banned. Is Jaggro getting banned the new ABB? Instead of always banning Brit, we're just always banning Jaggro here.
Well, it's a little bit surprising because no one, of course, does have that self-damage list, which is so good against Jaggro. Although it seems like no one might have predicted this ban from Baron and said, well, if my self-damage is getting banned, which I suspect, then I'm going to want to ban this Jaggro list because then I don't have anything that's too good into it if the self-damage is gone.
And self-damage has been banned previously pretty regularly. I think it was only the last matchup that it was not. I was looking at that as well, thinking if no one thought that self-damage was something that he would be, rocking in this matchup, that the unitless Brit US deck might have been kind of his ban of choice. Would that make some sense?
Yeah, the unitless deck is quite powerful into self-damage, and that is a very difficult matchup to play, so Noan 5 has got to be very happy with how these bans turned out for him.
Well, let's find out if that is exactly the case as we get into our bronze match here at our second OCC Ultimate.
Baron,
like,
very happy with that Geberg's Pioneer turn 1.
yeah, that first turn 1 is going to allow the Greyhound to trade as well as to push, or alternatively play a Greyhound, trade it, and then play another Greyhound, getting out a lot of nice pressure early on. And being able to play a We Can Do It rather early in the game, thanks to that Geberg's Pioneer, is going to be really nice. I actually really would like to see the trade come out, the Greyhound come out, and then the next turn, just kind of ignore what your opponent is doing and play a We Can Do It.
Well, Baron will have to wait one more turn than that, but yes, this We Can Do It could be very crucial if you're able to hit just 2 units with it.
Oh, I did screw up my math a little bit.
It's a nice little draw for Baron. He can trade out both these 1/1s without losing any units. It is a little scary if no one finds a Shenano.
Yeah, Baron is honestly going to need to rely on these effective trades because no one just has so much more card advantage in hand. If Baron doesn't make these trades effective, then later in the game he's going to get overwhelmed by no one's sheer amount of cards.
No one has 2 main options here, I would say. You can play the 15th Cavalry to trade and use 2 surprise attacks to deal with one of these units, or you can trade the 34th Cavalry to be a little more efficient. And no one disagrees. He says he can also play this Raiding Brigade here, which is reasonable.
Yeah, the Raiding Brigade does take out the back line, and the only other option to take out the support line would be the surprise attacks. But the surprise attacks are a lot more versatile than destroying something with specifically attack 2 or less. So it makes sense to me, I think.
Yeah.
This Skytrain is going to need to go pretty soon, or else the value that it would accrue would be very difficult for no one to counteract. However, no one does have the answers that he needs to get rid of the Skytrain. And it looks
Yeah,
like he's
double-
probably just, yeah, opting to get rid of it earlier rather than later before it can accrue too much value. Even if it means giving Baron a little bit of board presence, you know, saying, well, that's the best I can do. But that's that is the inevitable result if you allow Baron to keep that board presence. Kind of a catch-22.
Now, no one has the decision between this 5th Rangers and the Dragon Slayer. If he goes for the Dragon Slayer, then Baron will be able to push up this Engineers and use 99th for a value trade.
Yeah, turning those Greyhounds from 1/5s and 1/4s into 3/5s is pretty scary. Definitely makes sense to get rid of one of them so that the buff isn't quite as potent.
Baron doesn't have any Shermans, however, so he's beginning to run out of gas a little bit, which is very, very worrisome. But still, probably in a slight lead with the tempo advantage here and the initiative.
Yeah, no one is going to be able to make some really effective frontline clear trades with the 24th. Theoretically, no one could attack in with the 24th and then play 2 more 24ths and attack in with those as well. That would just about clear Baron's frontline. And if you added the 5th Rangers into that, you could clear Baron's frontline. Baron
I don't love this play from
understanding.
Baron.
Yeah, Baron seems like he understands that the 24th Cavalries are going to basically clear everything anyway over the next couple of turns, and so just trying to squeeze out some value out of the Greyhound while you still can.
He did have the option to instead 34th the Engineers, which I think would have made a little more sense when no one has these trades lined up already. But opting not to go for that. And here we have an interesting decision between a 4/4 5th Rangers and an 8/8 5th Rangers. I think an 8/8 5th Rangers is probably the way to go.
Yeah, Baron is getting really low on value and has more than enough credits to operate it on future turns, but instead decides that the tempo swing is more important, getting that big front line.
Yeah, maybe just hoping for that Sherman top deck to come out, because if it doesn't, how are you getting back into this game? The 24th Cavalries have just provided so much value for no one.
Yeah, without a Sherman draw, the game does appear to be in pretty dire straits. No one had the option to trade out with the 3/2, but because the engineer push would still allow the Sherman to happen, no one instead opts for the play for the 6/5 Dragon Slayer, which will trade effectively, can pressure Baron's HQ.
Yeah, we might need to see Blitzkrieg here just to trade out, which is very sad to see. And no one now has the opportunity to completely clear all the US units from the front line and once that's done, Baron doesn't really have the top decks as outs anymore that he needs.
Yeah, there's a lot of Germany, either primary or secondary aggressive decks, and many of them play Enigma, but Frontline instead opts to rely on that Sherman package, which normally is great, getting to draw 2 and get a 4/4 in onto the field as well, but it's in situations like these where that conditional draw can really come and bite you.
And the Kokoro sword as well is such a huge threat. That
Okra's
really
sword excels in the front line. If you can get it into the front line, then Baron really just isn't going to be able to come back from this game. It was looking almost impossible before, and it just continuously looks worse and worse.
Yeah, and no one has all the options he could possibly want to choose from.
With the
Baron
Shinano,
can
is that
squeeze.
lethal? That's 6 + 8 + 3 + 5. Yeah, that would have been really close either way.
But certainly not close to Baron winning, and he
Yeah.
doesn't matter if he loses the next turn or the turn after. When it's inevitable either way.
Yeah, Baron did not manage to make use of the proactivity of the US. You really need to keep that front line in order to get those important key Sherman draws, and not necessarily Baron's fault or anything like that, but if that doesn't happen for you, you can run out of card advantage relatively quickly. So no one opting for the pincer list, and does have the turn 1 Gebirgspioneer, but when you're playing pincer, you're really looking for that like turn 1 war production, getting that Astrakhan onto the field, especially with a Jaeger regiment to back it up.
And Baron really would have benefited by keeping that 35T in his hand. Of course, he didn't know that he was going to find a 1-drop infantry. It's a lot less consistent without these 30 seconds available.
Yeah, that's
No one?
that start from Baron might not be fast enough to prevent Noen from developing a front line early, but the one thing that Baron does have going for him is that Noen doesn't have an early Astrakhan, which would pretty much spell disaster for Baron, but that is the one saving grace that Baron has.
But no one will be able to play a turn 2 auto Canone, which or this Heinkel, just to clear out the Gebirgs Pioneer from Baron, put him on to another turn where he can't do much. Thankfully, finding at least a playable card, but not exactly the card that does a lot here.
Sometimes in this matchup, Auto Canone can feel a little bit awkward, as a lot of the US frontline units have 4 defense, a lot of 4/4s like Sherman and 5th Rangers. Which isn't to say that Auto Canone would have been a bad play, just that sometimes it can feel like it's not getting the value that you might get in other matchups.
Ooh, and the 99th is a good draw here for Baron. Allows you to move up and trade with one of these units in the back line and play another unit and get some stats with it too. A difficult decision, though, whether to trade out the bomber or the auto canona, as if you trade out the autocannon, you are left getting traded out immediately by the bomber. However, if you trade out with the bomber, then you get punished by 101st Infantry Regiment, making this autocannon a 4/4 and trading immediately.
Or any blitz unit, which no one doesn't have a lot of, but Katyusha and 35T are also possibilities.
Yes. Baron opting for the lower risk line, although lower payoff.
Gonna be honest, I don't love this play. I think that no one really would benefit from getting units out as quickly as possible. And obviously this is pretty hard punished by the stars and stripes. But it does create a really efficient value engine. The question is value what you need here? And I'm not sure if the answer is yes, while you're sitting on 8 cards in hand.
Yeah, it is a game of tempo here. The fighter does provide a little bit of tempo in that bonus credit, allowing you to play like a Burke's Pioneer. But as you said, it's also a liability into Stars and Stripes.
Baron is opting not to go for the Stars and Stripes play, deciding that instead setting up a future Sherman draw is more valuable.
Maybe he thinks that his opponent will now assume that there's no Stars and Stripes and play even harder into it, now that he controls the front line, to get a 4-unit Stars and Stripes.
That is a huge risk, but it could pay off. Baron
Yeah,
is
I
still
would
quite a few turns away from being able to play 5th Rangers and Sherman in the same turn.
If he top decks a Greyhound or a Red Devils, though, he can move up in Sherman. It's not quite it, but it's a decent card to fill out your curve.
The question is whether to keep the 35T back or to trade it into the BF.
I like
Putting
the
in the
trade.
front line. I do as well. I do as well. But you definitely don't want to attack face. It instantly dies to 101st. But these Astracons could spell could be rather difficult for Baron to get rid of, especially without a half track, which at the moment Baron does not have. And Blitzkrieg is not necessarily what you want to see off the top of the deck.
Baron goes for the safer play of Stars and Stripes and trade, rather than the riskier play of Sherman looking for a half track. But I feel like with all this card advantage from no one, maybe you needed to go for that card draw into half track. It's hard to say, and it's really hard to take that kind of risk on that big stage where it looks so silly if you don't find it, right?
Yeah, Baron was tempted to go for the value trade into the 101st. The problem is if there's even a single pincer unit from no one, then the Astracon is going to be able to trade effectively into the 5th Rangers. And so Baron did make the right play in trading off with that Astracon before it could grow any bigger. The problem is now is that that 101st in the front line is going to prevent that 5th Rangers into the Sherman draw.
Yeah, which forces Baron to go for an 8/8 5th Rangers, which is decent value, but it's really just not enough into no one's hand.
Yeah, no one
Even
is soon going to be able to get that 20-second infantry online, and that constant value over several turns without a clear way of getting rid of it. It's a lot of value.
Baron does recognize that he's not getting this front line anytime soon and just plays out the Sherman as a body, rather than dealing with a small 2-1 in the front line, which I think is a good call and makes a lot of sense. Although being put into that situation is never something you want to be doing. We see the Petliakov over the 22nd, offering some constant damage each turn with the bomber, rather than the consistent card draw, and also just limiting what Baron's deck can do with these deployment effects.
Yeah, Baron has burned through his 5th Rangers, but ordinarily Pelyakov is a awesome card against 5th Rangers, making it a 4/4 with a 4 operation cost. Unfortunately, no one was not in time to get it out beforehand, but that probably is not a huge deal as no one has had a wealth of other things to do.
I wouldn't be too surprised to see no one just start dealing some damage to this 5th Rangers. You do need to block the front line to deny Sherman draws, as that is Baron's only real way back into this game. So then it becomes a little bit of an awkward decision. Do you just buff your Astrakhan? Do you deal a little damage preemptively?
Yeah, and Pelyakov would have to leave the battlefield before a Sherman draw would be possible due to its static effect. So in order for Baron needs Sherman draws to get back into the game, but he's so far away from actually getting there that it's looking really rough.
Yeah, and PAR draw doesn't do a lot. We're able to trade out the front line Wirbelwind to deal with this Katyusha, but that's only a small part of everything that no one has.
Yeah, no one has a 20-second, 3 to 4, artillery / bomber damage that doesn't lose you anything. And when you're late in the game and have more than enough credits to operate and do really whatever you want, the card advantage is going to quickly start to accrue.
Baron opts to trade with Petliakov, maybe hoping that somehow, someway, he's able to find a Stars and Stripes that does something this game, but even still, that doesn't seem relevant enough.
I'm surprised to see no one not go for the 101st, because putting it on a Kayusha is like super good, but it does make you a bit weak to strap bombing or Stars and Stripes, so it does make sense that no one opts for a more powerful Astrakhan and some value engine.
Do we see
At
the
this
Stars? No.
At this point, even a Stars wouldn't really do it. That Astrakhan is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one kind of covering all his bases.
And of course, this Pathfinders has no deployment effect with the Pelyakov on board, and Baron recognizes that it's been game for a while.
Baron is going to need to win every single game in order to stay in this match. While no one only needs one victory.
But we've seen reverse sweeps before.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The match is certainly not over. Baron's gonna have to get under no one's ramp and decides to start with Femboy Hines. As you know, if you're gonna try and get under a deck, try and go faster than a deck. I mean, there's pretty much nothing faster than the explosiveness of Soviet secondary Hines.
Yeah, although no one finding the supply shortage and honey is a really powerful early game.
Yeah, the supply shortage sometimes can be too slow against this deck. We don't have the crazy, one of these crazy openers that Baron's deck can sometimes have, but having all these like 1-3 and 1-2 and 3-3 units means that supply shortage sometimes is just a little bit on the slow side.
That's
And no one
true.
is trying to give himself a nice HQ defense buffer so that when the supply shortage comes down, he will have enough time for it to kick in, do its work. And allowing Baron to further play into the supply shortage. This Hour of Need gives no one a couple of options, gives no one the option to Churchill or ASW Patrol or Supply Shortage. So any play that increases the number of options that you have is usually a pretty good one.
Yeah, and with this Monty, it's not too hard to stall until 9 credits here for no one to Monsoon Rot and Supply Shortage to clear Baron's entire board.
Yeah.
Um,
The Panzer 3F, I believe it's the 3F, does present some dangers as it combos really, really well with Panzer 1B. But no one having that money into, like you said, the Monsoon Route supply shortage means that even if Baron was able to amass a board quickly, that it might not stick around for too long.
yeah, he will be 1 credit off the next turn, but yes, if you Supply Shortage now, then you're able to just Monsoon Rot the next turn, presuming your opponent doesn't have any buffs, which Baron, unfortunately for him, does not.
So Baron didn't play the Heinkel. Do you think that Baron is looking to play around a supply shortage Monsoon Rot scenario, or?
So the Heinkel was off of the 22nd, so he didn't have the opportunity to play the Heinkel, but he could have played something like the Verbelwind or the Gebergs Pioneer, which I assume must have been that he wasn't ready for the Monsoon Rot to put more units down to 1 health when no one does run 3 copies of Supply Shortage.
Yeah, so Baron is stuck trying to play around the 5th Rangers while also trying to create frontline presence. And it's a really narrow tightrope to balance. We've seen TangTang kind of do the same thing in yesterday, trying to play around the 24th Cavalries. Blitz units are really, really good right now, and when so many aggressive strategies rely on keeping control of the front line, it's important to adapt your play to not get blown out by single cards.
Although this Churchill is A bit of a blowout here. Greif helps.
Yeah, unfortunately, no one had the options either way. Either Baron pushes into the 5th Rangers or doesn't push into the Churchill.
You can FW the Churchill and push up, and the Churchill does not bounce air units. So you'd be put in an okay spot for the following turn, but that Churchill would still be a threat for the rest of the game until no one finds a good opportunity to play it if you do go for that line.
Baron's leftmost card is Yag Bomber, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, that's what I meant when I said FW Jagd Bomber.
Yep. It is kind of weird to, allow the Churchill to come down again, but, essentially resetting the board, forcing no one to spend all those credits again is almost like getting that Yag Bomber down for free. So.
Yep. What I'd like to see here from no one is to just play out that Lancaster and trade in with the Jagd Bomber. To remove this threat from the board, open yourself up to play Churchill a little later on. You do also have this option to simply pin the Jagd Bomber for now.
I like this option as it plays better around Blitzkrieg. Otherwise, with the amount of credits that Baron is at, some 35 Ts into Blitzkrieg could be really scary, especially if that Panzer IIA was able to stick on the board.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, and that was probably no one's main consideration for this play that he went with.
I wonder what the cards are.
Yeah, Baron probably looking for one of these Blitzkriegs to.
Interesting choice. Baron seems to be betting that this game is not going to be over anytime soon. If he's opting for an Enigma.
To be fair, no one doesn't tend to have the tools to close out the game too quickly. Although if you can get the Churchill and the Lancaster down, that's a 2-turn clock, but it's so hard to set that kind of play up. Going for the ASW Patrol, also drawing 3 cards. Pretty good hit there.
Yeah, any kind of board presence that Baron could put down this turn would be weak to Churchill next turn. So I'm curious to see how Baron navigates this. It's definitely not an easy position to be in, but it still is either player's game.
Baron finds his first Soviet card of the game. I always find it funny when a deck goes so long without finding their minor nation. Or even better, when a deck goes a really long time without finding cards from their main nation.
Yeah, Baron does only play 3 copies of 554th Rifle, as well as 1 copy of 5-Year Plan, so it's not that uncommon, I guess, to see scenarios like that.
Yeah, it's certainly not. But I know when a lot of competitive players, like these guys here, often record stats. It can be really annoying when you're playing a game for so long, being like, wait, what is your minor nation? And you have to keep playing around cards that from multiple minor nations. Of course, that's not a factor in a tournament with open deck lists like we have today.
Yeah, it can be rather frustrating on ladder, but thankfully both players have full knowledge of each other's list.
Ooh, and we get to
Baron
see Baron's choices.
opting for the pursuit, which with a blitzkrieg, if Baron can develop a board in the support line into a pursuit, it'll reduce the cost, allow Baron to get those units into the front line, and without the +2 cost on the Blackwatch, it starts to become potentially realistic to see a blitzkrieg come out. But Baron is going to have to contend with an absolutely absurd amount of cards in no one's hand. Pretty much all of them either drawing or being rather effective solutions for dealing with Baron's many and varied threats. So
No one doesn't find the best hit off of this ASW patrol, but he could go for another one, go all the way up to 20 credits if he wants to. But opts to simply trade out. He's in a winning position. He doesn't really need to take risks like that. He forces Baron to the back line.
Having units in the front line means that you can trade out effectively against anything that doesn't have blitz. It means that you don't have to worry about blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg becomes a dead card, and it's just a comfortable position to have a Blackwatch in the front line. No one is sitting at 17 credit slots.
Yeah. And next turn he could go all the way up to 21 if he wanted to. I believe the maximum amount of credit slots you can have is 24, if I remember correctly.
I know that it's between 22 and 25. It's somewhere up there. It's like a really, really high amount.
I think 24 makes sense because it's double your normal maximum of 12.
Mm-hmm. We are in fact getting confirmation that that is true.
Yeah, it's not a situation that comes up often, but once in a blue moon. And of course, it's a nice little cards trivia fact to know.
No one opting not to trade into the auto Kanona, which, I mean, it is
might mean
nice to
he's
get these value
using.
trades, but
It might mean he's using his Lancaster to trade with the auto Kanona.
yeah, that's absolutely a possibility. Or maybe a Wrath Lightning retreat.
Yeah, all very reasonable options here for no one, and
Yeah, no one has no shortage of decent choices. He's far from being in a tight position. And we see
Baron
no one gets
recognizes
a
it too.
clean sweep over Baron 3-0.
And Baron gets to know what it feels like with what he did to J King.
Baron on the receiving end in that bronze match. Definitely felt like the matchup was a little bit closer than the score entailed, but we saw, I think it was Bubbles talking about it in the first semifinal or the second semifinal that they were casting, just the flexibility that a ramp deck gives you. No one has 20 credits and a handful of cards, can literally do whatever he wants whenever he wants. And I think, Berto, you mentioned it when Starry was talking about, does he not hit the auto canon? And it goes, well, he can kind of do whatever he wants, right? he kind of had the flexibility to go, well, I can bounce this, trade this, move this, and then end up with more credits on top of that. So huge congrats there to Noah and Baron. Hard fought battle, both walking away with a couple bucks. So not a bad day of cards nonetheless. I know both of you are pretty tight with Baron, and I think that you know he should still be proud, hopefully, of what he's accomplished here at the Ultimate. You're nodding your head, sorry, as if you feel like you're pretty certain that that's the case.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, Baron had a great showing. Go ahead.
And just a few weeks ago, Baron's goal was simply to make it through the qualifiers and play in an OCC clash. And he made it all the way to the ultimate. He made it past the first round, made it into the top 4, and that's an amazing showing and far exceeding what his goals were for just a couple of weeks ago. So he should keep that in mind, keep perspective there, and feel happy about how far he's gotten.
I just want to show up for the clash. And he ends up walking away with 250 bucks and finishing 4th in the ultimate. Not a bad deal at all. And I think Eileen was the one in our production chat mentioning that at this point, like, Baron has cemented himself as somebody who is, at the highest tier of the competitive level here. So losing to Noen in the bronze match of an ultimate is not bad at all. Let's bring up the bracket and take a look at exactly Baron and Noen's path here to the bronze match. So there you see, Baron not only showing up, but 3-0ing J King, losing a tight fought match to TangTang, and then falling to Noen in the bronze match. Noen having defeated Vinny in a 3-2 reverse sweep in the quarters, losing to Ozzy, and then going on to defeat Baron. So congrats to Noen and Baron, 3rd and 4th place here at the 2nd OCC Ultimate. We have TangTang and Ozzy coming up here in our grand finals. Let's swap out the casters. I will be rejoined by Bubbles and Spooz. Here we go, friends. It is the grand finals. Normally I'll just throw it out to you and have one of you talk about one of the players, one talk about the other. Bubbles, I'm going to give you the choice. Is there a specific player out of these two you really want to hone in on and talk about when it comes to their deck lineup and what you're expecting to see here?
I mean, to be honest, they're both pretty terrible players. I'm not really interested in either of them. No, I think it's a difficult decision because both players have such interesting decks and such strong players. I think for me, TangTang is this sort of where I lean towards a little bit more because he does have this ramp deck, and I absolutely love ramp. I think ramp is super enjoyable, but it's certainly a difficult decision because both the players have such fun decks.
I was literally thinking about you when Noen went up to 20 credits and just literally could do whatever he wanted in whatever order he wanted. I'm like, this is why Bubbles loves this stuff. So
it's so much fun.
Let's have you break down TangTang's list then as we get ready for our grand finals here.
Yeah, I mean, this first deck, this is something we've seen a fair about today. Actually, we've seen a lot of this USA Italy ramp deck. It's so much fun. You've got with this attack in the colonies, you've actually got a fair amount of sort of early game survival because you can go for your turn 2 war machine, and this allows you to clear the board with the removal as well as healing up a little bit. And then you can go into things like 5th Rangers, you've got the night bombing, and then further out into the game, you have this 7th Alpini to stabilize as well. So surprisingly good at stabilizing. This is something ramp decks have struggled with when you've diverged from this Brit ally because you no longer have AoE. And AoE is generally seen as a really strong way of stabilizing. You chuck out like a carpet bombing, go into fortification. This has sort of been the aggro player's nightmare against USA ramp for a while. But now with Italy, they seem to be able to stabilize just fine without the AoE that Britain offers and can just sit with Italy instead. But talking of Britain, talking of carpet bomb, talking of healing, we have a Britain USA ramp deck as well. This deck is super, super powerful. We've seen a fair amount today. And with things like the Avray, the carpet bombing, the Lend-Lease, and the ASW, you have like the best 7 drops in the game. You've got Hour and Need, you've got Quartermasters, you've got Spitfires and Cilios, you've got crazy 4 drops, and you do have the War Machines as well as the Pioneers to elevate, to just speed up your game, get things moving a lot quicker. So it can be a very, very consistent deck, and it can be quite difficult for pretty much everything to be. It's really well rounded, and it's very consistent because of that. We then have this sort of more old school aggro deck with this Jaguar deck here, Japan, Germany. This has just sort of reverted to what it was before Fatal Retreat was in the game. You've got stuff like Enigma, Marder, the 22nd. You're a little bit more interacting with your opponent, and it's far more important to pay attention to what your opponent is doing. Unlike with Feigned Retreat, where you could sort of just focus on your own game plan, try and dump your hand and play a Feigned Retreat. Now you need to worry much more about, do I have units to trade and to get my Marder draw? Am I able to consistently hold the front line for the 22nd? How big is my opponent's hand size for this Enigma? And obviously we do have these naval supply runs as well now, because you don't have this errata Feigned Retreat combo, which you used to have, which limited you to 2 to 3 orders typically. You can now be far more creative with the orders you put in your deck, and this just opens more room for sort of AoE buffs like naval supply run. And then we do have, I think this is the only Heinz deck in the tournament. Heinz has been around for a while now. It's something we used to see played with USA Ally, but Japan Ally seems to have become more popular. You've got things like the Type 93 and the Type 94, which are really, really powerful Japanese tanks. You have the Sendai as well, which is super strong. No naval supply runs in this, which is slightly odd because we do see naval supply run fairly commonly played in this Japan Ally Heinz deck, but you do have things like the Blitzkrieg, which offer just an absurd amount of damage very, very quickly. And also this Panzer H is something to look out for as well. It can just give you so much longevity. Sure, its stats might not seem amazing for a 4K one operation, just draw a card 2/4. It's not that crazy when you first look at it, but against like a control matchup, these things, along with the 38T as well, these can be what win you the match, because you're just repeatedly drawing cards over and over again. So you've got the aggressive side with like the Type 93s, the Panzer 1B, the Greif. Then you also have the slower sort of draw side with the 38T and the Panzer H. I think against control matchups, this deck is going to be something to look out for, because it could potentially just offer too much value for your opponent to deal with.
Thank you so much, Bubbles, for lowering yourself to the level of some of these players. I know you're obviously so good that you've done us all a favor by retiring from competitive play and just giving these other players an opportunity to compete.
I'm gonna be honest. I thought you were about to say retiring from casting. I was like, oh god, I'm being fired on live stream. This is happening in front of me. Oh, thank you for retiring from casting, Bubbles. And like, oh, wait a minute, what?
Thank you for retiring from casting.
Yeah,
Mark, disconnect him. We're done here. Let us move on to our other competitor and other equally amazing caster, Spooz. What's Azzy packing?
I mean, looking at the lineup that Azzy is bringing here, you might just think, hey, this is just the same that we saw from TangTang here. And yeah, you have correct and have wrong on that one. Like the first two decks are very, very, very similar. I think the US Italy one that we just saw from TangTang is similar, but I think Azzy is playing Stars and Stripes here, where TangTang is having an Hellcat for this. But other than that, it's just the exact same deck. And the same goes for that Britain-US ramp deck. So I think I don't need to repeat what Bubble just said here. Definitely looking forward to those, because those can be really, really long matches that might just need a lot of brain power here. So yeah, people watching should prepare for some long battles when we just get mirrors with those decks. But now the Japan-German and the German-Japan decks are not really discard control decks. They're like more wait, oh no, TangTang is playing the aggressive list. So Azzy is going with the discard control package here, with Germany, Japan, and Japan, Germany, with, yeah, Wolfpack, Case Yellow, Annihilation. We just talked about this archetype being very dominant in the current meta, and yeah, Azzy just bringing this today. We just saw this really working today, other than just yesterday. And yeah, this might be the deciding factor here, whether Azzy or TangTang is winning the finals today. Is control better at the moment, or is aggro better at the moment?
Well, let's see the first decision they made around which decks they are going to be banning as we get into this best of 5 with 1 ban. So TangTang gonna lose that US Italy ramp, and Ozzy losing one of the discards, the Japan Germany discard here. So interesting concept. Spooz, you're talking about the discard versus the aggro aspect. As he going and banning one of TangTang's ramp decks, this is essentially a mirror of what Ozzy is bringing. What are your thoughts behind why that would be the case?
Yeah, that's a good question, to be honest. I can definitely see Japan being banned there because, yeah, this deck is just overall really good. It has some finishers, it has a lot of pin, it has a lot of, yeah, just the discard package overall. So you have to decide which discard you want to choose there. And I think, yeah, I would have gone for the same probably. But yeah, why is that ramp deck banned? I mean, probably wants to avoid the mirror there, and I think he's very comfortable into these aggro decks with the lineup. But yeah, it's kind of surprising. I think with more control, I mean, the control decks, the Japan and German one, are really good against the aggressive decks, so you're probably not picking any of those, and then you're just gonna decide whether you want to go against the US or the Brit one. And I think the US one has just more value with all these big beefy units, and you just go with the Brit one and hope to outpace this, or just try to get a win against this.
You on the same page there, Bubbles, where Ozzy pretty much said, well, I'm going to ban one of the ramp decks, and I feel like the US is probably the one to do it, and the other two aggro decks I feel like I can handle pretty well.
So on first reaction, when you look at the decks, you might be inclined to actually ban this Brit ramp deck because it has so much card draw. And this is something you're generally quite concerned about. How much card draw does my opponent have? There is one, or I suppose 2 cards in this USA list which just make it an insta ban, which is TangTang is running 2 M4A1s. If you play discard against a ramp deck and it has 2 M4A1s, it is so difficult to win that. So I think that's a really big part in why it's been banned. And we see here in the mulligan, TangTang bringing their Jagro deck, trying to get this early aggressive win in, and Azzy actually bringing the Germany-Japan discard deck. Now, this can be a very interesting matchup because, Jagro does have the ability to beat down very, very quickly and is generally quite good against most decks in the game. However, Azzy has a lot of tools to combat it. You've got the Sudden Strike, you've got the 24th, and you do have a fair amount of healing. How do you feel about these current hand states if you are Azzy and if you're TangTang, Spooz?
So obviously TangTang with a really, really strong start here. Double type 93, 15th cavalry, but also Azzy with the 24s, also the early sudden strike. I think both players have a pretty good start, and it might just depend on just how developed the hands with further draw. Like this, it's for example what you don't want to have if you're Azzy here. Just draw 24s when you already have one in hand. But so far, I think Azzy could deal for a few more turns with what might come next to him here. But we will see what just happens after 24s got out of the deck and out of the hand. And TangTang can be really explosive here over the next few turns.
And yeah, since root out is no longer a problem for this Jagro deck, it allows you to put down units relatively comfortably because there's less likely to be any removal pieces to get rid of it. We do see the air superiority here, which is a very strong card against this Jagro deck because even without air units on board, most things have 1 HP. So you're pretty much able to guarantee a kill on most cards. Like you said, this 24th, you sort of have this chocolate ability, and unfortunately, just like the chocolate infantry, you do often seem to find these chocolate units in together when you don't need them. Just going for the Shinano, able to do, I believe it was 4 damage to face as well as clearing the board. So it's a fairly powerful card here. 3 credits to do 4 damage and kill a unit. It's pretty potent.
Really backfiring for TangTang here that he's not having an infantry to enable these 35 Ts. But on the other
just
hand,
going straight for the Enigma, not letting it get discarded. I considered maybe you can do a 35T hit face for 4 damage, but I do really like this Enigma while you have the opportunity to.
just
You
imagine
got the
finally. I
Diener,
mean,
you
you
got
can
the
get
Diener.
another one. Yeah, can get another one with the Diener.
But you're not going to have...
Mm,
Oh, never
no.
mind.
Double time 94. That's
I'm
unfortunate.
tempted to say, you know, type money 4 and just hit face for 2 damage. I don't really see what other options you have here. You could put down the Mardo and just sit back in the support line.
Here we go. Also get close to the range where, or to the stage where Isaac could just have the Maelstrom and just clear your whole board. So you kind of have to hurry up here if you're TangTang and just hope that Azzy is not having it. Just another... Yeah. That's the correct order. Get a +1 on the IG there.
Unfortunately, though, for Azzy, TangTang is going to be able to Marder draw off this trade if he desires. You're able to completely clear the board here. You can put down the Marder, go for the trade, and play the Audacity. I don't believe you heal off the Audacity because I believe the source of damage is from the Order and not the Aichi, so I don't think you get the unit kill from it. But we shall find out. I assume we shall find out very shortly.
Not
Or do you play
playing it.
around the Maelstrom? Maybe you just play around the Maelstrom and hold it back.
Knock.
As the knocking on the door, which probably makes TangTang think there is the Maelstrom here, but TangTang gonna go for the Audacity.
Oh look, no, it's
It
just...
does draw a card. So the little details there. We were getting all sorts of trivia today.
Yeah, that's an interesting interaction. I thought it would be order damage, but...
Oh, but finds the Maelstrom just a little bit too late, and there's going to be a huge amount of damage coming in this turn.
So good for Azzy that he's having the Arado here, blocking the damage
You
from
can
the...
kill it fairly easily, though.
Yeah, sure, but that's 2 damage that you're missing
for
on
sure.
HQ. Still enough? 2, 4, 8.
With 2 35Ts in hand, though, I'm just concerned about what's Azzy going to be able to do after the Maelstrom. You play the Maelstrom, and then you just get blitzed out by 35Ts. You're not going to have anything to push to the front line because all your units have died.
Triple 35T in hand.
And that's
See,
lethal.
that's even lethal
That's
now. With the
so
waiting
much
gate.
damage where no one can see it coming, and it just completely dominates the first game. TangTang quickly burning down Azzy, and Azzy not finding any heals or the Maelstrom soon enough. And this seems to be the story a lot with Discard today, is you seem to be finding the wrong tools at the wrong time. And I'm just wondering if maybe these more aggressive or control-y sort of ramp decks are the way to go. You know, you either go aggro or ramp, because Discard, you risk getting blown out by a large board.
Yeah, and as he had the tools in the starting hand, there's Sudden Strike and 24s, but yeah, could just not handle with the pure amount of units there. And that's why we have TangTang being in the lead here now. Just need to update that score, and right when I say it, it happens. And Azzy is
I'm
playing...
concerned about this matchup. You got 38 Ts and Panzer H's. There's so much draw here for TangTang. Look at this, you're able to eat from the deep and just replace the card instantly. I'm really quite concerned about Azzy's position already in this match. 24th is a really nice find. It's going to help you trade a lot. Just with the amount of card draw into the potential Blitzkrieg lethal, I don't see what Azzy's game plan is going to be.
Yeah, the TangTang can just stack units in the backline. And sure, Azzy has the Maelstrom, but other than that, not really any AoE. So if
The
TangTang...
issue is wow, you do have veteran units in your deck if you're TangTang. If there's a bunch of Panzer Bs on board,
Yeah.
then the Maelstrom won't even cut it. I do appreciate Azzy pre-casting their card, not even waiting to see what they drew, saying, I'm playing this no matter what. Doesn't matter what's on the top of my deck. Now we see the Panzer H coming down.
Oh wait, we don't get the premium service here, where we just see what TangTang is choosing.
We build more tension this way, Spooz.
We just have to find out how Berto and Starry did this. There comes the wolf pack.
I believe they They are the favorites. They are the.
Ah, okay.
We've been around for too long, Spooz. We no
Okay.
longer we've gone to the bottom of Marx's, and you know this is the issue, right? It doesn't happen, and you complain about it. You're just getting us further down the list. You've got to pretend you don't notice, just so you go up the favoritism list. How it works.
Double island defense here.
There's the potential for
There's the
a huge
blitzkrieg.
amount of damage soon from TangTang's position. And you've got the blitzkrieg, right? If you get like a 35T or something.
Oh no, that was the one of the better hits there. 38T would have been another draw for TangTang, plus another body that he can enable with the blitzkrieg later. Do you just play tempo Flampanzer here just to have?
I think you
stuff on
have to.
board?
There's not many one drops in Azzy's deck. You just risk getting blown out by a Maelstrom. But I think at this point in the game, if a Maelstrom comes out, the game is close to over.
Is he able to clear the
Finds the
Flampanzer?
second 24th again.
Again, plus the sudden strike, so it's not
This
enough damage.
still,
for
this
TangTang.
still looks okay for TangTang. You've got the Panzer 3F. Now, they don't have much going on in their hand. I'm curious if at any point in the game we will see this honorable being used on the Type 94. I don't think it's worth it right now, but there's the potential to find lethal further into the game by doing so.
The question is, do you deliver 6 damage here to face and
You
clear?
leave them above it. There you go. Look at this beautiful pay. Putting them down to 11. This stops the potential 10 health and drawing a card from this side of the fence. It's so powerful that it's so necessary to play.
Oh,
around
he's
right
one
now.
off.
He is one off lethal.
1
However,
damage of lethal.
you can deploy the Flam Panzer, you can just deploy the Panzer 2A, and you can go for the pin and just pass back the turn as is.
I would like to see that play, yeah.
I think you have to commit to leaving your opponent on 11 HP. I think the potential blowout is far too big. And if you can force Azzy to play these Ina defenses, it puts you in such a strong position. We may even just see the Sendai come out just so there's something to do with these credits. And this does mean you still have all these surprise attacks in hand to eat discard to protect this Blitzkrieg. The more cards you have in hand, the safer your Blitzkrieg is. We may even see this Panzer 2A sit back just to help protect it. Oh, but the Maelstrom off the top, able to clear the board and get their Yag Bomber back. Exactly what Azzy needed in that situation.
But still, kind of a case situation here for TangTang. Could kill the FW with double surprise attack. Deal 1 damage with the Panther 2A.
You just single surprise attack it. You're not under too much pressure here. And TangTang making me eat my words almost instantly. Panzer H is a very nice
Not
find.
too bad, but what are these options?
Okay, but we've got to look on the bright side. 2 of those go on the bottom of our deck. So we just looked at the top 3 cards of our deck, saw 3 cards which weren't very good, and put 2 of them under the deck and 1 of them into our hand.
Oh!
But lethal found off the top here. Able to go up with...
No.
That's lethal, right?
7 plus
Double
9.
bit
16, that's exactly
Yeah,
lethal.
it's lethal. TangTang
Whoa.
finding the 2-0, getting themselves a very... Wait.
No, look, it was 15. It's 1 off, but still.
You
Did
know,
Did you do the math wrong?
we certainly did the maths wrong. I would just like to say that we did pass school, myself and Spooz. We did make it through school. It's just something
too long ago. Yeah.
It was too long ago that something has gone wrong. Something has gone wrong very long along the way.
Oh, what was that?
And now TangTang in a difficult position.
So that island defense play there from
And yeah.
Azzy saved him the game here. Playing island defense without getting the draw and only +5 health. Out healed the second blitzkrieg by just 1 and yeah, gave him the comeback here. Whew, that was an intense one.
So I just, I've opened the calculator on my computer, so I'm ready for the quick inputs next time.
Ready for upcoming calculations? Nice. Okay, good. Oh, another intense series here. Azzy fighting back. 1-1 score now.
We see this Heinz deck again, finding a pretty explosive start here, but
Greif is really strong.
as he's going to better answer this Greif. But Nashub, Greif, and Panzer 2A. This is a very powerful hand here for TangTang. And yeah, as he obviously not able to answer the Greif this turn, just has to pass back and...
Yeah, we're just going to see it on turn 3, I guess.
Well, still then, you
maybe even later.
Yeah. And I think this is a really good way to play with Greif. Wait until you're going to get absolute maximum use out of it. TangTang now are able to push the front line, able to go for a value trade with the Nashub, and they're gonna start deploying so much of their hand. And there's no AoE in this deck here, so Azzy's gonna have to deal with these units one at a time as they come. This decisive defense could be very powerful.
Getting rid of the Greif.
It's such a powerful unit that you just have to get rid of it straight away. Gonna go for the attack and the colonies as well, getting rid of the whirlwind. This does allow you to play your air units, such as the P-51.
So there's a little bit of lagging here. I did not even see what he played on what, but TangTang left with 1-2-8 in the front line. Panzer 3 helps finding the correct tools here. Maybe a blitzkrieg.
I mean, Yagbomber is a relatively strong card to have as well. Panzer 1B, a nice find.
Oh, that's a good find here for
Rangers. Really, really beautiful.
Ranger. And he can put up decisive defense as well.
Decisive defense isn't going to be too problematic because you can trade a Type 94 to activate it, at which point you have plenty of tools to answer it. However, TangTang is going to have to be careful of how many units they put in their support line. If you overfill your support line, the naval engagement could be a huge game changer, especially since it could potentially heal a 5th range as well.
Yeah, these Panzer 1Bs do not have blitz, so they have to stick in the support line for 1 turn. If TangTang is not finding a Panzer 3F. So, but yeah, it's 9 credits, right? And Azzy did not ramp too much so far.
We see the Nashub to the front line. Obviously, this does get it away from the naval engagement, but I doubt that's why it's being done here from TangTang. The main reasons to push this up is it plays around the blitzkrieg. It means when you find blitzkrieg, and you can use the Nashub, but it also allows you to hit face with the Nashub to activate the countermeasure. Strategic bombing, able to kill both Panzer Bs. That's a very big find here for Azzy. However, it does leave you vulnerable to damage.
What is TangTang finding here? 38T is not too bad. Naval engagement already.
Pre getting it ready.
Yeah, I think decisive defense is.
And he's gonna go for the naval engagement, just trying to hold TangTang back as much as possible, saying, you don't actually have much in the front line. I'm not under much pressure. I just need to prevent you continuing to develop your board. But TangTang still looking in a relatively strong position. The issue is you can't really play your B-17 comfortably because you know about these surprise attacks and they just counter B-17 so efficiently. And a Blitzkrieg would be lethal here. Finding the Panzer 3F, a very strong card.
That's really good with 4 tanks on the board.
You have so many tools as well. You've got the sudden strikes, or the surprise attack, sorry. You've got the Sendai, but you also have the FW and the honorable death. You just have a hand of utility here of your TangTang. And this means most of Azzy's tools, they're not going to be as powerful as Azzy might be expecting them to be. Because if you're Azzy here, you're probably not expecting TangTang to have 90% utility in their hand. The Nashib refilling the credits. I go for the Yag Bomber and the Panzer F. Able to hit face for 4, and if any guards come down, you have the Sendais, as well as this these surprise attacks. This is really starting to look like finding the second Panzer F. TangTang gonna do so much damage.
One off again.
One off
but this
again.
time the situation is way better than last game.
This time the casters noticed that it wasn't lethal. That was the big difference. And yeah, this looks like GG for TangTang, going up to a 2-1 lead, and we're now going to see, I imagine, Azzy taking this ramp deck once again and trying to get back this win.
TangTang 1 win away from taking home $1,000 here. Can Azzy stop this with winning the next match? That's the big question here. We will have Brits versus...
It's
What do you
ramp
think?
versus ramp now. No matter what, it's Brit ramp against Brit ramp or US ramp. So we're gonna see value matches. We're gonna see late game things happening. I think this USA deck does have a favorable matchup. So yeah, bring in the USA deck again because you're just a bit heavier. You're able to deal with the Brits a little bit easier.
We
Seeing
also have the naval engagement, right? Which is really
Yeah.
strong against stuff like the Lancaster, the Sexton.
these hands. TangTang not finding any early cards or any early ramp at all. Azzy finding double War Machine as well as 5th Rangers and Avenger to use
Oh,
off it.
look, we also got it, Bubbles. Maybe we're
Oh.
not at the bottom of the list. Oh,
Been promoted.
oh, I'm a little bit relieved now.
Yeah.
So,
Otherwise, Spooz retirement being announced soon as well. The War Machine now for TangTang means they're going to be a Blackwatch fairly early on.
double
But these
5th
5th
Rangers,
Rangers, they're
Azzy,
so
yeah.
strong.
Going to bounce with lightning. He's just playing a Spitfire to cover it.
I mean, there's not many good options here. Blackwatch gets traded away so efficiently by these 5th Rangers. The Wrath Lightning does absolutely nothing because they do have these 0 op costs. You may have to just go for the Sincerely Yours. It's just you're not comfortable with whatever you do here. Azzy considering just going for the trade, but I don't hate not bothering trading.
Deciding not to go for second 5th Rangers here. But go in for another ramp so he has access to the Avenger next turn already.
Yeah, and this just means if any guards come out, you can answer the guards pretty much immediately. It's a great answer to Blackwatch as well as to the Grenadiers or just any real body that TangTang puts down. And yeah, if you don't say anything, you just go for the 8-8, put an 8-8 in the front line. That's a serious problem here for TangTang to deal with. But
Double
finding the
church.
second Harvey. Wrath Lightning is now a far stronger card. It does cost Azzy 4 credits to move that up again.
What is he doing with the 5 remaining credits? Or is he even going to push it up? Or is he just...
I think...
The risk is the Churchill, right? I think he has to push up. Otherwise he's just risking to lose his 5th Rangers. And he wasted a lot of credits into it.
The question is, do you go for the attacking the colonies on the Wrath and then follow it up with, say, the Pathfinders or the Stars and Stripes? I'd like to see Stars and Stripes held back because Brit Ramp, there's going to be a lot of things in their support line. Chances are you're going to have other opportunities to use this. So I'd like to see something which is a little bit more, conservative of resources.
There's like Stars and Stripes, Dread Bombing, and double naval engagement
I
there
think
in
you have
Azzy's
to
deck.
Avre. You don't have much choice but to Avre if you're TangTang. The question is just, do you go for the ramp, or do you try and say get the value trade with the Wrath?
Yeah, guard is not really helping you. Like the Black Watch is not doing much at all.
As a very talkative today, TangTang floating 9 credits.
Wait, what was that?
It was a 9 credit float,
But why?
faking the triple ultra.
What is this? And what is it? Huh?
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting play. I don't quite understand it. Going for the Avre this turn.
Especially with double Churchill. I mean,
Yeah, that's why it confuses me, because of, and going for the play we were expecting last turn, where you go for the Churchill and you go for the trade.
maybe you're just asserting dominance here and just say, here, I can skip a full turn with an
Yeah,
8 in the
I
front
don't
line
need
and I
this
can still
turn.
beat you.
I've got plenty of turns, it's certainly an interesting play. Second R3 here could be very powerful, but B17 a nice find as well. But I think you have to go for the second R3.
Yeah, especially because you don't have a guard to protect the flying fortress, so
Exactly. It's very vulnerable to this 50-50. And sure, you got blown out, but there was a blowout with a 20% earlier in this tournament. But I don't think you want to take these chances if you can help it. And I really like this, pushing up the Wrath to the front line, which protects the Avre. You push this Avre to the front line, it allows Azzy to get such a high value trade here. But saying, are you going to put both up?
that gives you the opportunity to just kill the 5th Rangers and then play a B7 Flying Fortress. But that's a really good line here and really good use of the Avenger. Getting rid of both of the Churchills.
However,
TangTang.
like you say, though, you can now kill this 5th Rangers and play the B17. The main risk here is, does Azzy have like another Avenger or a B17 of his own? But I don't think you have too much choice but to play it out. You can go for some ramp and put down a Black Watch. It's just, it feels very bad to take the 4 damage from this Avenger very unnecessarily.
As he only has 1 Avenger in the deck, but 2 B17, so this could still be possible. That he has one of the 2 B17s in hand here. Which he currently does not have. Hand actually not too good. 2 7 Alpinis played here, but those are not stopping bombers.
Unfortunately for TangTang, they've used 2 R3s this game. They're not going to be able to find a third. That would be beautiful right now. I like this. Going for the ramp, going for the draw, just trying to find some better resources. I would have hated hitting with the B17 this turn and putting down the honey as well. But I think this is certainly a reasonable play. I'm just concerned that TangTang might not be getting enough value out of B17 while it's on the board. Spitfire, a really strong find here, going to allow you to find your B17 as well as protect your backline from any potential bombers.
Instant
but the
carpet
carpet bombing. This allows you to trade into the front line to clear the front line. You may also ramp this turn or put down the quartermasters. Gonna go for the ramp instead. Something you do have to worry about when you're playing against these Brit ramp decks is they can heal and Commonwealth you in the same turn, so you have to be careful for that. But this board state for Assy is starting to get very scary. Obviously, there's now going to be a bounce every turn here, bouncing back one of TangTang's units, unless TangTang finds a way to deal with these Pathfinders. You don't really want to be throwing out the Lancaster for this.
Bouncing the Alpini.
I think a Monty here is sort of what you want if you're TangTang. Not going to find the Monty, though.
Finds a lot of healing.
Bounced the Wrath. I think you really want your honey to be bounced there more than anything, but you're going to be overdrawn next turn if you're TangTang. And we see now the power of these pathfinders. Even on like a ramp deck, they have the deployment effect like a Kitty Hawk, which is a really powerful deployment effect, essentially doing 2 damage to every target you need. We now see the M4A ones. Mosquito
Yeah,
over.
one carpet bombing is already gone. So I think you can go a little bit wide here. Also, I
That
just realized that
mosquito.
TangTang is not playing supply shortage or monsoon.
No. So
Double
this
carpet
board is
bomb.
looking really scary. That mosquito would have been really nice, as it would have allowed you to use the Kitty Hawk and the mosquito to kill the pathfinders. I think the sheer value that you get out of playing USA over Britain is starting to become apparent in this mirror. It's really starting to cause problems here for TangTang. A lot of the time in this Brit ramp against USA main ramp, you're trying to Commonwealth down your opponent, but they've just healed too much here, especially with these calling the colonies. It's giving them just that little bit extra health they need to not even have to worry about common.
Yeah, the big problem for TangTang here, you could play a guard, but you're not guaranteed that it stays on the board from the Pathfinders.
Yeah, and you don't want to throw away a Wellington. We're going to see a 1 in 4 in the Pathfinders. And it bounces the guard. Is that lethal? I believe that was with all the that was 15 damage. TangTang had how much health?
I don't know, but I'm impressed how you
went
just
away.
able
It went
to
away.
utilize your calculator now. That really helped.
Well, I knew there was 15 damage. I just didn't see how much. I was going to see how much health TangTang had, but he scooped it up, and we're going to see Brit Ramp against Brit Ramp. This is the mirror match in the second OCC Ultimate Finals for $1,000. Spooz, have you ever had $1,000 on the line for a mirror match before?
No, not really.
I was going to be worried if you said yes.
I can't even imagine how just excited I would be, and I think I would just, I don't know, sit in my own sweaty shirt here.
Yeah.
Game 5, $1,000 on the line, and you can just become the second ever OCC Ultimate Champion after Tiger.
I mean, there's so many variables to think about in this mirror. You know, who's going to find their ramp first? Who's going to find their draw? How are things like B17 going to hit? You know, can you find a black watch in a good time? There is a lot of stuff that can go wrong and right for each players. And I think it's going to be very important who understands the matchup better. What are you mulliganing for? What shuts down your opponent? And what's bait? Because there are going to be some things which bait. You know, a Commonwealth, for example, a Commonwealth might not be what you need in this matchup because you just might not be able to get it off. However, if you do get a Commonwealth into Lancaster and Wellington, you can smash your opponent's health down very quickly. It's going to be a really difficult matchup to judge for the players, let alone for us and the viewers. And there's the potential for fatigue. There's so many variables to think about in this mirror. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm a little bit nervous.
Yeah, just imagine how the players must feel here. And it looks like both players are just, they need a minute to get into themselves, just relax a little bit and to focus on this deciding match number 5 here in the OCC Ultimate, number 2. And we see TangTang has the ramp. And
doesn't have the draw to go with it though. Azzy throwing back everything, finds the hour of need, but oh my god, TangTang's hand. TangTang's hand. They got the ramp into the draw. That is perfect.
War Machine into hour of need. And another one.
Oh, you just need the quartermasters now. That's all you need.
So good. Like, if you don't find your ramp early on, you get it later in the game when it's not useful at all. You want to have units in the late game. So TangTang with an absolute advantage here. Double ramp, turn 2, turn 3, followed up by maybe a Spitfire for tempo or even Landlease or even more ramp. So many options here.
I mean, as they're finding some okay tools, they found the Pioneers now. Oh,
Carpet on
no.
top.
Wiping the honeys off the board.
Yikes.
Quartermaster's going to come down, though. Quartermasters is going to be a really, really powerful card for Azzy, as it's going to offer them this draw that TangTang has. And I'm wondering if you're TangTang here, do you just go for the Lend-Lease?
I don't know, to be honest. It's really difficult. You could also just go for the Spitfire to have something on board that also applies pressure. He goes the ramp Spitfire line here.
Oh, but you're not going to answer this Quartermasters in time. Look at this. Arrow of Need drawing 2 additional cards. Double War Machine, able to completely catch back up. And this has just swung. TangTang looking like he had such a strong start here, but Azzy catching up on credits and overtaking them on cards.
Yeah, that's just the pure power of Quartermasters once you can't deal with them.
With these Pioneers on board as well.
Yeah, that helped a lot. So, yeah, Azzy definitely back in the game here.
TangTang maybe just considering 8 damage to face here.
Yeah, did also not find the best, late game. It's still mid game. Like, both players ramped so insanely that we were mostly just at turn 5, 6, but both at
there is no early game
and
in
10
this
credits.
matchup.
we just deleted the pre and the mid game, so we just
You've got the late game and then the later game.
the late game. Pushing up the Quartermasters, no longer needed. Like, when you get the draw out of them, they're mostly like, no longer useful and just make you overdraw if you find your ASW, for example. So pushing them up to trade them into stuff later, get rid of them, and
Ultra
not
going
risking
up.
of overdraw.
If TangTang is able to play around Ultra, Ultra can be a very important card in this matchup. So it may go into TangTang's favor a little bit more if TangTang is able to play around the Ultra. However, if Azzy catches TangTang out with the Ultra, that could be a huge thing in their favor. B17 coming out. Gonna hit the 50-50.
I don't even care what other unit is coming there. Just
Goes
an
for his
instant carpet
second
going
rally.
from Azzy. I think Azzy needs to go to bed. He's playing. I think he's playing far faster than humanly possible.
When you have the OCC ultimate at 7, but you've got work at 8, you've got to.
You better hurry up.
Now,
What do you do
this game
here?
going very back and forth. Azzy going down to 12 health. You do have to worry about this board.
Azzy has the Wellington in hand that can potentially kill the B17. Could also just play another carpet bombing.
I mean, if you play the carpet bombing and also go for the Wellington and kill the Quartermasters, I wouldn't hate the second carpet bomb into the Wellington, and that's exactly enough credits you have to kill the Quartermasters and the B17 this turn. If the Wellington gets killed, you do have the second Wellington to follow it up and remove whatever threat is now on the board. And Azzy taking their time, which I'm really happy to see. Happy to see him just slowing down the gameplay a little bit. But TangTang finding the carpet bomb, able to clear this board.
Look at these turns here. Carpet bombing after carpet bombing. But this was the final one for both players, I guess.
Yeah, we did see the incredibly early one for TangTang. So TangTang doesn't have any of them left either. This Wellington looking very strong. Able to go for a little bit more draw with the Quartermasters, put themselves up to 13 credits. And this is the first time we've seen them go past the 12 credit mark, but I doubt it'll be last. And I gotta say, as finals go, this is a back and forth. It keeps going in one player's favor and then straight back to the player's favor. And it's just so difficult to keep track of who's winning and who's losing.
Absolutely. That's just insane how you can just one turn you think, oh, he's having a very good position now, and the other turn it just swings completely around. Now the B17 here from Azzy, plus more ramp, plus more draw from the Quartermasters.
ASW Patrol. ASW Patrol has so much potential.
Oh, but also
TangTang
ASW for
finding one.
TangTang.
Now you can go for the RAF and the ASW.
Going
Just
for
goes for the
Lend-Lease first.
Lend-Lease. I think you're relatively happy with this 50-50. Going up to 17 credit slots. Now there's no unit to ASW patrol for Azzy, so just going to deploy some units. I'd like to see TangTang flooding the board because you've seen both the carpet bombs. If Monty comes out, that's okay. I'd like to see like maybe double RAF and a Grenadier, this sort of stuff.
I mean, there's still the risk of Churchill, but it's not bouncing the
Yeah,
lightning
you've got
back,
the-
so they will stay on board.
Exactly. I think it's worth it to start putting stuff down on the board. We see double RAF, and that looked like a
And the
Sexton as
Sexton,
well.
yeah, that's also not too bad. Sexton found here from Azzy.
The ASW patrol is going to clear a high value unit no matter what it hits. The question is it the best use of your 15 credits? If you're playing Sexton, you cannot go for the ASW.
Yeah, you have to do it first. Otherwise, you might risk pinning a unit. Oh, he's going for...
And you could Avray ASW.
Deciding to take the 33% on hitting the Sexton there.
There's so many options for each player. This has got to be very mentally taxing. Do not envy the players at all. Azzy thinking about their options. Gonna go for the ASW. Gonna
Hits
hit one of the rafts.
lightnings.
I think you'd rather it hits the Sexton, but it's not the end of the world because you have this as the backup. HMS could be a very, very important card. And take in mind, Azzy is sitting on 12 health. If TangTang can finish them off, you know, do you just go face here for 7? Face for 7. You've got the Kitty Hawk to put face down to 3. Fight!
What?
Fight lethal with the exact amount of credits.
Are you serious?
Oh my god! TangTang.
Why not
just
play it
finds
first?
it.
As if he knew that he would find it.
Oh my lord! Out of nowhere, the Lancaster comes swinging in and puts
Oh.
TangTang as the champion.
Isn't he supposed to draw first? Like, come
Yeah.
on now.
Draw
Amateur hour
last.
over
Do
here.
it
He
in
knew.
style. Do it in style. Draw last.
I think we saw just about everything in that finals. It went to 5 games. We saw TangTang, I don't know, throw game 2, doing some questionable math, coming down to 1 to let Island Defense boost him back up. We saw TangTang float 9 credits in game 4. We also saw Azzy spamming emotes like crazy and playing so fast that you couldn't actually cast what was happening. That was a heck of a finals. I could not be happier with what we just saw.
Yeah.
I think though, just to point out with the credit miscalculation, 2 of the brightest minding cards also made the same mistake, so it's easily done.
I mean, some of these players are playing, the amount of mental fortitude it takes. You can't expect them to not make some mistakes. The casters, they have no excuses. That's what they're here and paid for. So Spooz, you were talking about before the finals here, this might be the deciding factor around, hey, is control a little bit better right now? Is aggro a little bit better right now? Do you think this gives any sort of inkling as to what direction might be a little bit more comfortable in the near future meta-wise?
Not really. We just saw that Jagro is not as bad as we thought after the Feint Retreat change. I think the tournament just showed us that it's still a viable deck, and it got some new tools like with the Dragon Slayer. So yeah, I think we learned something. That this card is, for example, not as strong as we thought, and Ramp is actually pretty fun to watch and pretty fun to play, and can lead to some very interesting games and situations. So overall, I'm really happy about this tournament, and we just had some cool moments there and some very interesting plays.
What about you, Bubbles? Any specific takeaways based on how this finals went, based on how this whole event went in the way of, crafting a new meta going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoy casting. I always enjoy cards tournaments. They're always a lot of fun. I get to hang out with people I enjoy, and I get to talk over a game I enjoy, for viewers that I enjoy. But I think today and yesterday we've had some of the most enjoyable matches I've ever experienced. I think it's been some of the most interesting cards I've seen in a long time. We sort of got into this meta, and it wasn't necessarily a bad thing to have this meta of Frontline and Bridair and Jagro and these things being very consistent. It created for a very chess-like version of cards where everyone had a good understanding of what was going on and it was very methodical. But new times now, and we've gone from this sort of everyone understands what's going on to seemingly no one knows what's going to happen. And I think it's created a super, super enjoyable meta. I think right now, cards competitive scene is, for the viewers at least, the most interesting it's been for a long time, and I hope it just continues to carry on like this. I'd say continue to improve, but it's in such a good state already as far as I'm concerned that, improvement, as great as it would be, just more of this. Keep it coming.
I agree. I think there's this really fine balance between, a meta being really aggro and people just show up and smash their decks together and see who wins. And then we've lived through the control meta where it takes a pot of coffee to get through a game because we go for an hour of people clicking skip my turn. No, I'm not going to do anything. And I think this had such a nice balance. Like that game 5 was such a cool. It's going to go for a good amount of time. Everybody's going to have options. They can make decisions that make them feel like they're impacting the game, but there's action. It's not them sitting there with this boring, drawn out control matchup. So I totally agree, Bubbles. I think there's this really nice balance that's been achieved right now, and hopefully it continues on this way because I think it's a great and healthy path. And I'm sure by saying it's a healthy meta, I will get absolutely torn down in Twitch chat. So bring it on. But let's also bring on the final bracket here and take a look at how we finished off this huge 2-day event. We see TangTang being the winner of our grand finals, taking home $1,000 as he coming in second, Noin in third, Baron finishing fourth here. Nobody had an easy path. We had a fairly quick day one with a sweep and a reverse sweep and a DQ, but the today went to 3-2 in all but the bronze match. Hard fought. A huge congrats to all of the players. A big thank you to all of the casters, Bubbles, Spooz, Starry, Berto. Y'all did a phenomenal job. Thank you all for watching and tuning in to this OCC Ultimate, and a giant congratulations to TangTang, who is the champion of our second OCC Ultimate.